This is the regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Soboroff, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum. Number one on the agenda, consent agenda items. We have no comment. Oh, we have a comment card for 1A.
Just 1A?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve items 1B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Call the comment for item 1A, please.
We have the Red Chief Hunt on 1A, and this is relative to the donation of flashlights and magnifying glasses valued at $745.
Good morning, the Red Chief Hunt speaking on flashlights.
Good morning.
And, staying on topic regarding the magnified glass flashlight thing, anytime you want to improve with flashlights and spend $745, it's okay from the Millennium Alarm System. So go ahead. I set that forth with right away. Michael Hunt, the Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve item 1A, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. We're now on regular agenda items. 2A, we do have comment cards. And this is the department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the recommendations contained in the Office of the Inspector General's report dated March 10, 2016, 10-year overview of categorical use of force investigations, policy, and training regarding the various de-escalation techniques taught to recruits and officers and the specific manner in which those techniques are currently being taught to them.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Deputy Chief Bill Murphy, Commanding Officer of Police Sciences and Training Bureau, and I have with me Dr. Pinnell, who's Police Training and Education, and my right-hand person, Commander Patrick Smith.
Good morning.
Okay, what we're going to do is, I don't know if you want questions, you just want me to go right into this.
I think you should just go right in.
And feel free to fire questions throughout. The very last slide will be questions, so in case you missed it, we will remind you to go ahead and do that. We were directed, obviously, to go ahead and give a presentation on, there are 12 recommendations. Several of them pertain to training and how we do training on the LAPD. So one of the, as part of that report, these are exact words: to reduce the use of deadly force and to emphasize de-escalation. And many of the recommendations said, where do you do it in training? Where do other agencies do it? Compare yourself. Look at how we do the training. Come back and explain it to us, so you have a comfort level that we do take de-escalation seriously and the reduction of deadly force. So that's what we're going to do. Just as a quick little slide, it's just kind of historical perspective. If you look at any one particular year in an officer-involved shooting, it could be up or down. It's probably better to look at a trend, say a decade on it. So if you went back to 1986 to 1995, that would be 20 to 30 years ago. We averaged about 61 officer-involved shootings back then. The last decade, we're averaging about 44, so it's down about 17 less officer-involved shootings prior to back in that time. And the same thing for the non-CATs. These are twist locks, wrist locks, takedowns, use of a taser. Going back to 20 or 30 years ago, we were about 2,400 per year. The last 10 years, we were about 1,700 on an average, so 697 less. Quite frankly, there could be many reasons for the trend going down. One of them was way back in the 20 to 30 years ago. The crime rate was significantly higher. We had a very bad crack cocaine problem, so the narcotics on the street was bad. But in that time period, too, we also went through the consent decree, so we certainly were in 12 years of a consent decree. That improved our processes. It certainly improved our training, but the reason I put this slide up there is to tell you that the trend is going down, and our goal is to keep it going down. That's what we want to do. All right, let me explain training terminology, because we're going to talk about it today just so that have a baseline of what the terms are. This slide up there, if you look to the left, you'll see topics, use of force, law, academics, human relations. Those are straight out of the academy. Those would be some competencies that we would teach. When we design training, it's really very much like the who, what, why, where, when. I believe everybody's probably heard that before. When you're about to write a paragraph in English or something, you usually ask yourself those types of questions, or a project. For us, if you look in the far right, we begin with content. That's basically what we teach. On the LAPD, we never teach anything unless it's written in a policy, a procedure, a training directive, a training bulletin. It's just bad to develop curriculum when you don't have a source document. The very bottom one is called a source document. That's our basically terminology for we need a document before we start anything. So in the case of like the tactical directive we'll talk about later on de-escalation, when we had talked in use of force subcommittee, I had gone over many times saying we need to get that approved. I'm glad we have that approved. So we now have that source document we'll talk about later that is approved. Now in the middle, modality is important too. That's kind of how we teach. There are different methodologies. I'm sure that everybody in this room at one point or another had at least lecture-based. That's the oldest form of training. Someone gets in front of the room, a professor, a high school teacher, and they talk to you, and it could be in a PowerPoint or it could be just on notes that they have. That's very, very old school. These other ones, I'll go through them quickly. That RBT stands for reality-based training. That is training, just like it says. You're trying to duplicate reality. Many times it can involve scenario-based training, which is the second one, SBT. It could also involve use of simulator machines. I believe some of the commissioners have gone through force options simulators, where you have literally dozens, if not hundreds, of different types of simulations. You get up there many times, unfortunately, you shoot somebody you weren't supposed to shoot, but that's part of the process of learning. And same thing that goes for our officers. The third one down there is PBL, is called problem-based learning. What that is, that's very much tied with facilitation. That's how we teach in the classroom. About 8 or 10 years ago, POST, which is Peace Officer Standards and Training, came to us, asked us if we would be willing, with their funding, to go ahead and look at a lot of different academies. We ended up looking at about 10, come back and rewrite the entire 912 hours of curriculum into problem-based learning and basically scenarios. It is an academy of scenarios. We did that. We took that on. It's a very, I believe, outstanding academy. And quite frankly, we stole a lot of ideas. Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Alameda, the sheriffs, they had a good idea. We brought it back and built it in. So in that, the reason you go to problem-based learning, it increases critical thinking skills. Instead of telling them what the answers are like a lecturer would do, you give them a problem, they have to solve it themselves with highly skilled facilitators. So it's a much, much better way to do it. And in concepts, those are how we teach too. You know, for example, to tie this together, we have a training bulletin how to deal with weapons other than firearms. That's a big concern today. Somebody has a knife and you get a radio call and you get the person with the knife there. We wrote a training bulletin probably about 15 years ago on that topic, and within it, we explained a tactical concept called distance plus cover equals time. That simply means if you have somebody with, say, a knife, you put distance between yourself, you take some sort of cover, that could be a vehicle, a block wall, something so they can't charge you, and it's a equation or a formula, and you're trying to buy the time because the time allows you to get additional resources, to create a plan, and to communicate. And if you want to talk someone to jail without any force, you need to be able to buy the time to do that. So that was a written source document. It explained the concept. We would use problem-based learning, talking about it in the classroom, or we could use reality-based learning or scenario-based learning, showing it, putting them in that practical application. That's how kind of training works in a basic sense. All right, the presentation we're doing today is going to address the recommendations 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. If you like, I could point out on each slide, this is 7, 8, 9, and 10, but that could get a little bit monotonous
That's not necessary
for us.
thing.
But just want to know that's the focus today. And you're going to see three parts, really, on the agenda. One is the internal review. You directed us to look at all of our training and see where de-escalation is and see where, you know, basically we do the scenarios and reality-based training. The part 2 is external review. You ask us to look at other agencies and conduct surveys and some research and come back and tell you what we found on that. And the third part we added in, which is a training plan. We want you to know what we're going to do with all this information and what we're going to do about training, especially on de-escalation. I'm going to turn it over now to Commander Smith.
One of the things we did in training was to look nationwide also at our internal training programs and what we have. Right now, there's no national definition for de-escalation. There's no national policy or directive as it relates to de-escalation or the topic of de-escalation. We took a look at the history within the LAPD as it relates to de-escalation and the number of classes that we teach as it relates to de-escalation, the traditional classes surrounding de-escalation, the common competencies within de-escalation, also an overview of de-escalation within the courses that we currently have and teach within the program of within the training programs that we have. Right now we have a fairly long history of de-escalation as it relates to our training. In 1948, we started the daily training bulletins, which were designed to capture daily lessons learned, problems within the department, and also what lessons we can teach our individual officers. In 1968, we started with the first training bulletin designed to detail training for individual officers and bring things to the forefront as we see within our training. Right now, all 41 police academies within California are required to build a curriculum on the competencies within de-escalation, and we'll go over that within one moment. In 1999, the LAPD required crisis intervention training for all officers. And in 2000, we started with continuing education delivery plan initiative, in addition to requiring tactical communication or perishable skills training within the department. The traditional classes that we teach related to de-escalation include our crisis intervention training, which is primarily revolves around our MHIT or mental health intervention training, our crisis negotiation training, which includes many of our SWAT officers as they handle major incidences within the city, and our conflict management and resolution, which is designed to de-escalate de-escalate major circumstances as officers approach them. One of the major competencies is tactical communication and tactical concepts, which I'll go over in 1 second.
So the three classes that are noted, the crisis intervention training, the crisis negotiation training, and the conflict management resolution, what percentage of officers are receiving that training?
You want me to?
Sure. Well, this is part of the past. Those are traditionally where they're found.
Oh, this is the historical.
This is the historical piece
Okay.
of it, and we're going to move actually
Okay.
more into
Okay,
where we
sure.
are. So maybe we'll just.
Sure.
Yeah, we can answer that and tell exactly who's getting
Yeah, I'm
this.
more concerned with what we're doing today, so
Yeah.
that's fine.
What we want to go over now are the competencies identified within de-escalation, and they include communication skills, conflict resolution skills, command and control, applying the use of force policy, use of force options, including use of force simulators and things of that nature, stress tolerance, and emotional maturity. All of those things are included in our de-escalation plan, or common competencies. An overview of our de-escalation courses. We looked at all of our certified courses. And when we say certified courses, we're referring to our post-certified courses and training programs that have been developed within LAPD and also outside of LAPD that are approved by post for instruction by the department. Right now we have 149 certified courses. 70 of those courses contain concepts already within that hold the common concepts within de-escalation. 79 of the courses are technical courses such as VICE and things of that nature that are specific courses, or bike school, something specific that are technical and not specifically involving de-escalation. Right now, we also use the best practices of integrating de-escalation into the vast majority of our courses. Across the board, we've learned through the best practices that if you want to infuse something within the culture of the organization, you have to include the competencies in almost all of your courses as you go throughout the development of any training program or de-escalation plan for the department.
So those courses include academy classes as well as in-service training?
Absolutely. Any class that we develop, we try to include the common competencies of de-escalation or the competencies that whatever we're trying to push down, we don't just have a single course related to it. We try to infuse the common competencies throughout our courses so that it's ingrained within the culture of the organization.
So I just have a quick question because you started your presentation, and I know we've had this conversation in a different form, but you started your presentation with the historical overview of LAPD training and talked about how this has been something that you've done throughout the history of the organization and presented a timeline with, you know, all the various ways that you had previously integrated de-escalation training into the department. So I guess my question for you would be, what, if anything, is different today in terms of the effectiveness of that training over and against the effectiveness of that training, say, in the 90s and in 2000 and 2001 and 2002 and 2006, because there's a dissonance between this
Absolutely.
this assertion that you've always trained this and
Absolutely.
what we know to be the history of the department.
Absolutely. Not only do we have to take a look at the history of training, we also have to look at the history of crime. We also have to look at the history of the problems that have plagued society. In the early 90s, the department is not just this department, but across the United States, we were plagued with the emergence of a crack epidemic. And the emergence of this drug and others plagued our inner cities, and it also plagued our suburban areas.
And the rich areas too.
Can we please not have disruptions from the audience, please?
And with that, a number of issues were raised in society, as well as our department's ability to adjust to the circumstances. As time has gone on, as you will see, when he started out, he talked about a 10-year look. I think that was one of the earlier slides, a 10-year look at our use of force, a 10-year look at the circumstances surrounding things. And as time emerged, we went through probably a 12-year consent decree where we were specifically held to task as a department on our training, going through our training to ensure that we met all of the guidelines, going through our training to ensure that we address all of the competencies within training. Not just that, we were held to a 95% rate of evaluation to ensure that all of our programs, which were monitored, evaluated, completely gone through our monitors to ensure that we were meeting the guidelines implemented by the consent decree.
Just to add a little quickly to that, focusing on training, it's radically different. The academy I went to in the 1980s was lecture-based, very little technology on the streets. When I hit the streets, we had a mace, which no one ever used. You had a baton, you had mace, and you had your gun. And that's what we trained to it. It was a lecture-based. What we do now is with the problem-based learning, it's taught very much like graduate level school. The teaching in the classroom is like it. If you've seen some of the problem-based learning classes with facilitation, that's in fact, we have some courses that are certified at the graduate level from universities. So it's totally different there. The tools that we have is a lot different. The amount of time that we spend on training is a lot different. It certainly has evolved. And we believe, and I believe if you had DOJ representatives here, that our ability to integrate training can dramatically change culture. We're a different department today because of that 12 years. We had to, I've shown you before, just one paragraph in the consent decree, 117, how we wrote that into 117 classes. That's how you impact a culture. That's how you change people's hearts and minds, and we've done that. And that was a long, arduous process, to be frank, but we're different the way we train and how we act compared to 25, 30 years ago.
One of the things that Chief Murphy touched on were the tools available to an officer at that time. There was a baton, there was your simple mace, and there was your handgun. Now there's...
Okay, ma'am, if you disrupt the meeting again, I'm going to ask you to leave. This is an important conversation we're having. This is to the core of the use of force of the department. We are spending a significant amount of time. Countless hours were spent in the preparation of this presentation. I can promise you that every member of this commission takes this very seriously. We are very interested in hearing what these individuals who spent... Ma'am, now that is, maybe you think so, but if you disrupt the meeting again, I'm going to ask you to leave. So we need to hear this presentation. We need to understand what the department is doing. This is, if you have a comment, submit a card, make a comment so everyone can hear you and we will all listen to it. But if you disrupt the meeting, you're going to be asked to leave. So, and you, sir, that's your only warning. So that's 3 people that have warnings. If you disrupt again, I'm going to ask you to leave because we want to pay attention. We want to understand what's going on. We want to do our jobs here. And we can't do our jobs appropriately if we have constant disruptions from the audience.
Years ago, there were only a few options available to officers. Now we have beanbag shotguns. We're also implementing a 40-millimeter program, which have a sponge round. And we also went more to a reality base. Our officers are required to go through our, for qualification each year is our
Force option
simulator.
simulator. 4 times they qualify with a handgun.
Perhaps we could get back. I think the commissioner's question is what's changed, and the academy was entirely redesigned.
It was.
And so I think that's, if we could.
Yeah,
talk
I was going to
specific-
say, I think I mean, let me just be really clear because I'm sort of responding to your presentation, and and again, I did tell you that there was a significant dissonance for me in the continued or in the representation that we as a department have always trained de-escalation. If you stand up and you say that, and you say that over the course of our history, this has been an important and an integral part of our training, then you have to tell me what today makes that training more effective than it was in the 90s. And I'm not talking 25 years ago now. I'm talking in the 90s and in the 2000s. And there is significant evidence, and what is understood by many people in the city is that the evidence of this historical de-escalation training was not necessarily resident in the actions of the department. So I'm trying to understand, based on the presentation that you've laid out, why I should believe or how I am to know that what you're doing today will be or is more effective as it relates to the result that we're seeking to achieve than it appeared to have been in the 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Is that part of your presentation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes,
so
we are.
If I
Yeah, we're
can,
going to.
if I can speak to this a little bit more coherently, because what we've seen in education as well is a shift, and probably many of the places that you went to school, even when you went through, were lecture-based and dominant that way. And law enforcement itself kind of gravitated to that because we wanted to hold an academic standard. But the challenge is that a classroom environment is very different than the fluid reality of what they deal with in moment-to-moment changes in the field. So back in 2000, and I can speak to this because just this change and evolution I've seen in our mental health intervention training, because we were trying to do the state-of-the-art thing back in 2000 after the Margaret Mitchell case, and we put together a 40-hour CIT school. But I can tell you it was predominantly lecture-based. And we had 4 hours of psychopharmacology. And we thought, and we felt, and through conversation and pulling in experts from around the country, that we were doing the right thing. However, when we now get to poll and go on ride-alongs and see what officers are dealing with, they are not going to need the lexicon of psychopharmacology to do their best. And we thought. So now we've adopted and adapted and continued to change both. And I think this is also pushed by the redesign of the academy in 2008, when we started reaching out and looking to all different kinds of fields. How do you best train for that singular modality? For example, public speaking was never and still is not a learning domain designated by post. And yet we know that officers will do public speaking every day, and it's the number one anxiety and fear across the general population. So when we don't teach to skills that they're going to need, regardless of whether they are identified in the post-learning domains, we have to expand our thinking and think of what makes an officer successful. So that research that went into the 18 months before we were able to implement a problem-based learning academy, we went to look at who's this next generation of officer? How do they learn now? In our high schools, they are taught creativity, collaboration, communication skills, and critical thinking as the common core in California high schools. And so if our academy then doesn't build on the strengths that they bring to it, we can fall into, well, that's the way we've always done it. And so we really had to challenge and look at, is the way our academy setting us up to succeed in the field with this generation, with this shifts that we have in our society? Media. We didn't have to, in the past, it was really, we could just say no comment. We're not doing a comment. However, that is probably not the best skill set to give to officers now, even though it's not a learning domain. So that is where the problem-based learning allows us to look at the totality of a problem and to look at some of the skills and competencies of getting people comfortable, both putting together what they think, what the law has, and how they apply skills. So if you were, again, looking at the changes that you would see in the academy today, we are constantly pushing our officers to articulate their thoughts, reasoning, and action behind how they might demonstrate in a scenario. And in contrast, in the past, they might demonstrate the correct behavior in a scenario, but if we don't push to the next level of understanding, why did you take that action? Did you understand probable cause? Did you understand the background of what you were doing? So if we did, then the behavior looks correct, but the reasoning behind it isn't. And so that is what we are trying to influence, not just through the academy, but through every subsequent training that they go through.
Just to add to that, in addition to like the modality in the academy, we went to problem-based learning and facilitation. We also changed the structure of it. We created now RBC teams. These are teams of people that are subject matter experts that on day one of the academy.
Bill, describe what an RBC team is.
Okay, it's basically Recruit Basic Courses, RBC. So what that is a team of a sergeant, and usually it's a half a dozen police officers that are subject matter experts in the different concepts that we're going to teach, like tactics, human relations. And the way we used to do it, when I went through the academy, Chief Moore, Commander Smith, is you would have a law instructor. You'd go in there, and maybe the first week you'd get a 2-hour class on law, and then the third week you get a 4-hour class on law, and then fifth week you get another 5 hours on law. That individual instructor had no idea, no clue where you were in your journey of that 6 months along. Now we have a whole team, management sort of structure. They are 100% responsible for taking them from day one. They're in every single class all the way up till they graduate. If you remember the graduations, I think all of you have been there. They acknowledge the team. They're the people that stand up to the right over there. That team was with them from the family orientation before they began the academy to the end. Now, why is that important? They know the strengths and weaknesses to a great extent of every single recruit in the academy. So if they're weak on tactics, they can start working on it. They're not relying on my day that if I was weak on tactics, I better go ask for help or I'd be in trouble. So not only do we change what the basic modality in the classroom and how we taught it, we changed the management structure to make it much better.
So I think the significant difference that you would see is while we had content in our training and we met all the requirements of the consent decree, the content was there. The shift in how we want officers to understand, articulate, and demonstrate that content has shifted to critical thinking and problem solving. So, and again, that's what we're trying to do consistently through all the courses in our department.
Can you talk a little bit more about the specific scenarios that are discussed in scenario-based and reality-based training?
Specifically in the academy or through?
In service.
So in service? Well, I think we are getting to that, but what I would say is that...
Oh, if you're going to get to that, I don't want to interrupt the presentation. I got a little, wasn't sure where we were going, but please,
okay.
Do it when you're
There'll
ready.
be slides, and we'll talk about in-service and the use of force update class. And in fact, in that one, we could talk about the different scenarios that we have.
But one thing to just build on, and since the slide is up there about our academy being a scenario-based academy, there are the 14 different post-scenario tests, but our officers will do multiple scenarios preparing for that post-scenario test. So it's not like they just do it one time. The way we teach, the modality to teach them is we do more and more scenarios, and we might do it starting from a tabletop to get them thinking properly, and then you got to kind of put the words and the actions together, and that's the multiple scenarios that, so when we say we're an academy of scenarios, we want them to do the basics over and over so that there's a level of confidence and competence, at least on the basics, before they get out there. We know we can't get every scenario out there, but as we develop a scenario, just trying to think of, on traffic stops, we might also add a human relations component. So it doesn't mean that we singularly, because none of the events that officers respond to are just singularly about one topic. Even a domestic violence is not singularly about one domestic violence situation. It also has human relations and diversity and tactics and different people involved. So we have to kind of train and weave those stories together as they get to the scenario test, if that makes a little more sense.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, I'm good. Go.
Okay. And going back to our police academy, right now we have 912 hours of problem-based learning format training for all of our officers, and that has been taken throughout many of our courses within the LAPD, including our additional training for officers not in the academy. Right now in the academy, we have 188 hours of de-escalation training, 25 post-written exams. 11 of them are directly related to de-escalation and the common competencies that I went over just prior. 14 are post-scenario tests, and 12 of them specifically deal with de-escalation. And many of them, 3 of the 4 of them satisfy our post requirements as relates to our de-escalation and requirements from post. And we start an academy class once every 28 days. Our MHIT training is...
Well, actually, this one's LETAC.
Oh, I have a different book, sorry. Our LETAC training is Law Enforcement Tactical Application course. It was started in 2000. It has 32 hours of total training. 20 of it is reality-based. 27 of those hours are related directly to de-escalation, and this is designed for officers to go through. It's more detailed. It's directly to the point as it relates to tactics and intervention and things of that nature to bring our officers closely aligned with changes in policies, updates, and new directives. Right now we have our MHIT training, and that's our mental health intervention. It involves 40 hours of training. 29 hours are directly related to de-escalation. And this training was not just developed with the department, it was also developed with the Department of Mental Health, so that we were including different concepts and things that they see. It's reality-based, and we started the MHIT training with the divisions that were mostly affected by mental health and mental health issues, and they had high frequencies of situations where mental health was an issue as they went throughout their normal areas of patrol.
We're going to add a little bit to that.
If I can just say a little bit more on the mental health intervention training, we looked at that because back to frequency of training. Right now, we currently do that twice a month. The first, and you're going to hear about this in the police sciences and leadership, so it kind of pairs up with the next slide. But we looked at how do we get people more comfortable with dealing with incidences where there is mental illness and that needs to be considered. And we wanted to ensure that we created a pathway where more people were getting more of this information. So quite often we get pressure to put more into the academy, and while there is more in the academy due to the Senate bill that came along, so we did do that in the academy, but what we want to do is create that foundation, especially for the first 5 years for officers. And so without some experience with people who have mental illness or are bipolar or some of the challenges people have with depression or suicide, without some of those experiences, it's kind of training in a vacuum, and it has limited ability to bring their training and experience forward. So now we bring officers back at 11 months for the police sciences and leadership program, but part of that is to ensure that they get that 40 hours of mental health intervention training. Just so that you know what the common conversation across the United States right now is that many agencies in the traditional CIT model will say you shouldn't even have this course until you have 3 years on as an officer, so that you have enough experience built in so that you can...
What's CIT?
That's the traditional course that we started
Crisis
in
intervention
2000,
training.
crisis intervention training, right? You'll hear about it also as the Memphis model. So it's kind of where some of that originated, and we like to feel like we took what we learned from that model and then enhanced it into the MHIT course, which also comes out of Australia, by the way. Their original course comes out of Australia. But just to emphasize that we wanted to create a funnel where every officer was going to get that. So now, as of January, when we started the PSL program, every officer at 11 months will be getting this critical training. In addition to that, because we knew that field training officers were not all trained up in a 40-hour course, and even though the state requirement is much lower, we want to have the field training officers to have as much as the police officer 1. So we are requiring that all field training officers also go through that course. So in that second course, one course is going to be devoted to the P1 courses in every month, and then the second course is in service, but that is focused on field training officers, those who are in the RESET program, those who are in the HOPE program, and any other kind of critical incidents that we feel like an officer needs a refresher
Deal with
on
the
mental health
homeless
training.
issues.
And sorry, at what point do they get that, and how often?
So now they're going to get the 40-hour course at 11 months. I think once
The field training officers and the...
Field training officers are in the midst of getting that trained up. I think the deadline for training is June of next year for all field training officers to go through it. We're on course with that, but we've also
Joanne, can you-
created an
Dr.
8-hour update.
Dr. Pinnell, can you describe how the FTO program, the schooling was changed, how it evolved? This was redesigned. This was not the standard, if you will. The reworking of the FTO program, dealing with persons with mental illness, use of force.
Well, yes. So there's two things there. One is that we've required all FTOs to go through the 40-hour course, but then we've also asked in our update course, every 3 years, field training officers have to go through a 24-hour course. We added a whole additional day to include more of an update on mental illness, fair and impartial policing, and also issues related to the LGBTQ community.
Command and control. We added another 8 hours that's above the 24-hour requirement. So to recap that real quickly, because there may be a slight confusion, when you graduate from the police academy, 11 months after graduation, you have to go to this course. So you're getting 40 hours of state-of-the-art mental health crisis training. When you become an FTO, you have to go to this course. And then we select people that their assignment is to deal with, say, the homeless down here, downtown in Venice. They all have to go to this course. So those are our targets for it. So eventually, with the fact that everybody that's still on probation is going to the course, the entire department will be trained in the future, near future.
Yeah, so we've created the funnel for that to happen. And I guess the other thing to just let you know that so we're doing 40 hours that are predominantly based and focused on de-escalation in a team format with our community partners. They also go to service providers. So again, we are thinking outside of ourselves for resources and ways to connect with people who are doing this really difficult work and getting people resources. It's very, I mean, certainly I would encourage you to attend and be involved in it. They do scenarios, they do presentations back to their class. But at the end of it, we also have the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. Parents come in and talk to our officers, and many of them will say how significantly it has changed and shifted some of their views, maybe and assumptions even about dealing with the mentally ill.
And when did this start, and how many members of the department have actually gone through the program?
So we redesigned it in 2014, and so it's been going for 2 years. I know we just trained our 1,000th officer, so it's an ongoing process. And again, because it's a 40-hour course, we keep it to about 30 people in a class. We don't want it to be more than that. Otherwise, we start losing the efficacy of getting to see people do role plays individually. So we're continuing on that course right now. We do think within the next, as we continue to do this, probably within the next 4 years at least, we will have all of patrol handled.
Yeah, with
so-
30 to a class, you don't want to go much higher than that if you're doing reality-based learning and scenarios, because they have to participate in the scenarios themselves to become.
Bill, and Chief Murphy, can you describe, though, the 14 to 15 to 16, the expansion of MHIT, and including it in PSL 1 is a strategy to deepen the penetration in our first responders. But the state of MHIT, the initial class structure, I think it was once a month, and now you've expanded that.
Yeah, it is. It began with, actually, it was less than, it was, once a month, going back to 15 when we first launched it. We went ahead and we ended up working with MEU, Mental Evaluation Unit is the entity that teaches this, and their training unit. They were able to get some grant money, which allowed us to expand upon that. We're now doing 2 courses per DP. Deployment period, there's 13 per year, so we can do up to 26. If we can get the problem with expanding, quite frankly, beyond that, if you're thinking, well, why don't you do 4 courses? It's 40 hours. Half of the instructors are mental health professionals. They don't work for us. They actually have a job dealing with mental health issues in the community. And so we have to have them to make this successful. That's what makes it successful, is having these outside experts work with us. So I don't know if we can go to more than 2 per month, basically, or deployment period on that, because it would get very, very hard getting the professionals too.
One of the things, though, to speak to the efficacy that you were asking about is that with developing those partnerships, and the people in the classroom are really important because they're seeing in the classroom the people that they work with on the streets. These teams that go out, our SMART teams and the Department of Mental Health workers. So when they get out there, we're actually facilitating a better and more cohesive response. And where we've seen this in the last year, and I don't want to steal thunder from the Mental Evaluation Unit, except for just if you look at the number of referrals to psych ERs versus urgent care centers and in being able to triage better. So what they're taught in the course as well is that every mental illness call, they can call back to a 24-hour desk and talk to someone and triage what is the best thing to do. You know, this is what we have, and maybe we have the situation settled, but what is the best kind of intervention so that we're not responding to the same home with the same we are not going to arrest our way out of mental illness problems. And so to do this in a more comprehensive manner just makes sense. So in our triage desk, we also get access to the CAMP, which is the case management system that they have been able to do in concert with the Department of Mental Health So we're looking at trying to identify, and even that if we can get some kind of early identification.
But you called it a camp?
Camp is the case.
There's going to be a slide. I'm going to explain that later in a slide. But let me just leave you with this, too. Mental illness is such a big issue that we built that into virtually all training. Whether it's in a scenario where we'll test the officers, it's like use of force de-escalation. We will integrate that across the board. Constitutional policing integrated across every class that we do. Building public trust. Those are very, very hot topics that we'll write into curriculum. We'll make sure it may not be the focus of that whole 8 hours or 10 hours or 24-hour class, but make no mistake, we're going to do scenarios. We're doing something on mental illness. So it's just not this 40 hours. It's a hot topic. We'll build it in, integrate it into any class we write.
I'm sorry, the one thing I wanted to identify was that the way that we triage and then also have a case management system, we've seen a reversal in the number of referrals, or a different trend, if you will, from the psych ERs, which are highly ineffective. Our officers would wait in the psych ER for 6 hours, and then, often by then, somebody's emergency would have abated and they're not going to be held. And now we still have somebody with mental illness out on the street. What we found is that by triaging and learning from this course in the last year, we have reversed the trend to have more referrals to the urgent care centers, where somebody can be treated on an urgent care level, and sometimes it's either a medication issue or but they're able to do that much more quickly and have them referred and given referrals. And so we're not having the same backup, so that the psych ERs are actually for the people who urgently need that, more so than for people who have a temporary medical or psychological emergency that can be handled at the urgent cares. So we're starting to see a difference in where our referrals go as well. Sorry. So the last thing, and I think the slide was the police sciences and leadership. And the piece that I wanted to identify about that is that I don't actually know of another agency that is bringing back officers as a class. And I want to emphasize the importance of bringing them back as a class at 11 months, because the synergy that is in the class, because of the cohesion they had in the academy, and our department, because we have 21 different areas, we send you out, but you can really lose your voice as a young officer. You're seeing in, taking in things, you're working with a field training officer, but you might not know, is my experience normal compared to another officer at your level? So when we bring them back, and I think a couple of you have been able to sit in that classroom and see the kinds of conversations that we have, they're very honest and upfront with their challenges. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of remind them of who they are, where they came from, how the department and the mission, vision, and values that we want them to maintain throughout their career. And then that's also when they get the mental health intervention training.
I attended a half a day of this training. I thought it was terrific, and I plan on going back to attend a different section of the training. And I've encouraged my fellow commissioners to go as well. I do think I think the idea of bringing back the classmates together, where young officers are going to feel empowered to have a voice and to really engage in the back and forth with the instructors. I just thought it was a very dynamic conversation, and the fact that they had almost a year of actual experience was. I think gave them a totally different perspective than what they learned in the academy.
Just to add to that real quickly, there's PSL 1 we have out there. We're designing PSL 2, and then there'll be PSL 3. So the game plan is in the first 5 years, when you're a police officer, we will give you 240 hours on these topics, and we'll keep building on the topics. I know of no other police department in the country that invests those type of hours.
Chief Murphy, can you describe the outline of PSL 1, what it's meant to accomplish, the outline of what PSL 2 is meant to accomplish, and the outline for 3? There's a structure a broader structure than the hours.
Do you want to take that one? That might be better.
This is something that we've been really excited and have wanted to create for some time, and in some, now that we have the department's support to move forward. So PSL 1 has been implemented since January, so that is moving. The design phase for PSL 2. So we cover just in general the same things, but at a different level every time. So the first day is covering issues related to current hot topics, so not just hot topics, but leadership topics. So we want them to really instill that they are a leader, even at the very front line and lowest level of our department, that they're a leader from the moment that they step out of in uniform. So we have leadership in there, we have fair and impartial policing, we have image and impression management. All those topics are covered, and communication skills on that first day. Then they move into investigative skills, where we're looking at in the first PSL, they're looking at special populations and care and consideration of victims, especially victims of violence, and how to talk to people, and moving through an investigation. Then to use of force, and we have a class on use of force mindfulness, philosophy, and command and control. We move from there into community trust building, and they all will do a presentation back on what they can do as a new officer. And we actually incorporate the community relationship division. They come and listen to the community relationship project. We want to hear from the frontline officers, the newest officers that we have, on what's something that we're missing. How can we, at all levels of the department, start or infuse that? The second week is the mental health intervention training, but the other thing that they will get is 4 hours of peak performance. And that training is meant to emphasize, actually, it's one thing to talk about a 3-12 schedule when you're in the academy and you're there 5 days a week. It's another thing to talk about the management and life, how to be a peak performer. If you haven't been hydrating properly, if you haven't been sleeping properly, any one of us don't handle conflict well under those considerations. So we need our officers, and they're doing 3-12s, and then they might have court the very next day. So how are they going to take seriously their own personal management in order to be a peak performer in the profession that they are doing? So then we will kind of take the next level 2 years later. The reason it's 2 years later is because
is the P2 training, is that happening, or is that being designed?
The Police Sciences and Leadership 2 level happens 2 years later, and that is in the design process. We will be ready with the class that started PSL 1. We will be ready to have them at their 2-year mark, so that they can continue to build throughout. So they will still cover leadership, investigative, command and control, community trust building in PSL 2, but we will also give them, and kind of getting the logistics of this is still out there, but we're planning to have the LETAC course as the second week of PSL 2, so that every officer will get the advanced officer training at
The full LETAC course?
Full LETAC.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are designing how to build this into our process for that first 5 years. The PSL 3, we're continuing. I haven't got as far along on that because that's a little bit out.
Just
but
describe
again,
your concept. What is your concept, the broad stroke of what that third segment is meant to represent?
So again, we'll hit on leadership. We'll hit on all those core courses. I'm not sure what the second week will be yet. So we're still assessing on, and we'll have to do some more focus groups on where people are at. I think the next, at that mark, people are looking to become a P3, a field training officer. So the exciting thing for our department, and I think for all of us, is that in the past, our field training officers didn't have all that training. They might have had one thing here and there, but they didn't have all that training in becoming a field training officer. So we're also going to create a better field training officer for whoever's coming out of the academy. So it'll be exciting to see this flourish, but that's the process right now.
I think what Chief Moore was hitting on is the baseline of what we're teaching. The very first PSL 1, the primary structure is MHIT because it deals primarily with mental illness and the core base of what surrounds many of our calls for service and what our officers will have to deal with. The second one will deal with LETAC, which is tactics and force options, de-escalation, and things of that nature. And she's still working on the third, but primarily around that time, you're usually dealing with command and control issues, leadership, and things of that nature that officers who around that time will start to emerge into as they develop along the normal progression of their career.
So, and I just want to point to the Commissioner, and we need to probably get back on the mark with moving this forward, but in the outline of what they've described in short, the department took a significant change in 2015, beginning in 14, and then really transitioning significantly in 15 with an investment in in-service training. Historically, we began to recognize that our in-service training was lacking as far as the level of commitment, the level of resources dedicated, and pulling officers out of the street and dedicating them to days and weeks of training as in service. The department's efforts in providing public safety and deploying resources in the field are all compromised because all of this training is existing resources. That also speaks to some of the delay or the extension of time it takes to train 10,000 uniformed officers, but also to formulate the training. This is an issue that is shared, frankly, across the country in mental health training, where many of the agencies today are trying to do 16 hours of mental health training, and they're trying to train their entire department, and they're doing so over a course of 2 or 3 or 4 years. So the organization, we're balancing, but I'm proud of it, and I know Chief Beck is as well, because what you see before you and what you're seeing developed is a process to respond to what are the issues facing us, how are we performing in that, and how do we best equip, train, and prepare not just our recruit officer, but our in-service officer to deal with these changing dynamics. And whether you see that as the 10-hour use of force course, or you see that as the stand-down training a year ago, just those 2 courses, this organization has not had the ability to do for years. We historically would do mobile field force training, and we would do, MACTAC type training. Tactics trainings to active shooters, responding to horrific events, but investing in it because of the nature of our landscape in America, but recognizing that a couple years ago we began shifting into these other areas because of the complexity of what our people are seeing. We think that they understand the active shooting, the MACTAC, the type of mobile field force tactics in dealing with crowd management and so forth. And now we need to make sure that these other areas of their competencies are as equally well prepared.
I have one quick question.
Yep.
Are MEU specialists on call, or you just got to catch them in their shift?
Yeah, 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. I got a slide. I'm going to go into that in a while. We'll talk about processes and why they're important. I think it's about 2 or 3 slides down,
Okay,
so I'll do that real
Okay.
quickly.
I'll wait.
And on this one, Commissioner, do you want to? Yeah, on this one, Commissioner, I think you had asked about scenarios. If you look at this slide up here, this is a quick little breakdown of 6 of the scenarios we're running. We actually have 7, but 2 are on actually mental illness, suicide by cop. One's a male homeless. One's a 211. That's a robbery in progress. One's unconstitutional policing. They test the officers if they have the requirements, so they could figure it out. Do they have basically reasonable suspicion to detain the person? If not, if they have a consensual encounter, what do they do about it? Going back to those 4 hot topics, we designed all of these about that. Domestic violence and 415 men with a gun. They're all reality-based training. Real quickly, I don't think I said this earlier, reality-based training would contain there are different levels. At the lowest level would probably be a force options simulator, because you have a $100,000 machine, but basically nobody's shooting back at you, and you're talking to a machine. You're running a scenario. Think of like games, Halo or something like that, except not with the Oculus Rift. The next level up would be a scenario-based training, where you have instructors that are going to role play and play a role. These are all part of reality-based training. The highest level of reality-based training is a concept called force on force. It came out of the military, adopted by the police, where you do these high-level role plays, but the instructors you're going against are like academy instructors, SWAT officers, and you introduce technology into it, whether it be simunition, the public calls that paintball, or we use many times iCombat technology, which you're putting on vest, and if you make a mistake, you'll get 1,000 volts of electricity into you. And the reason for that, the paintball or the electricity, is that you want to have a consequence to the training. You want to have that moment where the officer knows that they made a mistake, because you're going to debrief at the end. You're going to go over the debriefing sheets. We create intensive debriefing sheets, and we see if they de-escalate it. We're going to ask them, what did you do to de-escalate the situation? How did you end up being shot with all that paint, the orange paint glowing on you? So the problem with that, quite frankly, probably is money. That's the issue with it. If you go to Simunitions, that bullet costs 48 cents a bullet. It's extremely expensive. That iCombat technology we bought costs us $150,000. When we do that use of force training and you watch them shoot the beanbag shotguns and the tasers, that cost us, that whole day cost us $450,000.
At Pendleton, when I went down to Pendleton and saw where you had the Army specialists come at our guys and train them. And
force on force, that's outstanding training. Very expensive to do that. Very, very expensive. But just hopefully that answered your question. I want to jump in and make sure. Okay. We better speed this up. All right, real quickly, we talked about processes. Commissioner Soboroff, I think you brought this up. Training, just to explain the role of training is just part of what we're trying to accomplish, which is an outcome that we want. In the case of use of force, an outcome where there's no use of force used at all, or if we have to get into a situation, a minimum amount of force. But part of the process dealing with, say, like people with a mental health crisis, if you look at it, the way you organize your department, the processes that you have are critically important. We've learned over the years with the consent decree that forced us to write many new procedures, new policies. It caused us to change the way we do business, quite frankly, whether it was in training or in management. It was very intensive. Officer-involved shooting process, you know about that. I think we have probably one of the best in the country. It's very in-depth. And MEU, mental evaluation, this was specifically to talk to that. You need to have a process that backs up the officers on the streets. So we do have that triage. We had 24-hour triage. You can pick up the phone on Christmas night, New Year's night, doesn't matter, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There will always be an expert there to give us advice. Smart teams, 24 hours a day, we can send to any of the officers who request it. It would be an MEU detective or an officer that works in MEU, mental evaluation unit, along with a professional from mental health. So it's a civilian professional and one of our officers go to the scene and help you out.
So let me stick my little question in.
Yeah.
So I met with a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And said, so how's it going? It's fantastic. It really works. It doesn't happen during business hours, So a lot of times in the middle of the night, I get a call, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So one of the I don't know if it was a husband or wife said to me, she goes, yeah, but the car that he took to go to the event was some like clunker, and I was afraid to allow my husband or allow my wife to go in that car in the middle of the night to that situation. Are we getting into those fine points of, if that's the difference in somebody going or not going, it can be a big deal. And it's all about money. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
That one I can't answer, but we could probably get back to you as far as how those vehicles.
But do people drive their own cars to the situation?
Some of them, they can.
Not
Yeah,
police officers?
The
And
mental
they're
health
not armed?
professionals. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to solve that because they're part of the team and they're coming, and I don't know if Chief Moore could jump in on this.
Well, I think the question is better posed, Commissioner, to MEU. It's as to the age of the department fleet. It is, I would ask, a bit off topic. It is an area that the department continues to work with the city. Our vehicles are at 115,000 miles. They are a 10-year lifespan. Those are extended periods, and you can have those types of scenarios where the person driving the vehicle or someone seeing the person drive the vehicle can believe that vehicle is less than ideal. However, I can assure you the vehicle is safe, and it will get them there. But it is a bit off topic as to. Now, one last thing on this is the expansion of MEU. which was significant. It's been doubled in size, more than doubled in size, and the hours to 24 hours a day has required us to do so on the dime. It is not it's an area that's expensive in its personnel, and so we are trying to find efficiencies wherever possible, and utilizing the fleet is one of them. But again, I think it'd be better to perhaps offline we can work with MEU to understand whether or not the DMH professional, I believe the DMH professional is with the smart officer in the vehicle, and I got a thumbs up in the back there. So I don't believe they're driving a separate vehicle. However, BSS, that's a different scenario. So I think.
And last one, camp. What that is say they have a person that has mental health issues, and they're generating multiple radio calls. They call 911 30 times in a month. Well, what happens is MEU professionals and mental health professionals get together and come up with a game plan to stop that, to get them more help and so on. So it's been tremendously effective. The point of the slide is that we've learned over the years you absolutely need to have organizational structure and processes that help training. Training is just part of the picture to be successful. If we didn't have this, I think we would not be in the shape that we're in. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Pinnell. Going with the theme of processes, we have many of them in training division. And another thing I want to point out real quickly in your report, you said when you write training curriculum, when you're designing it, that you should look at it from three perspectives. One is, does it increase performance? Does it improve safety? And is there an accountability measure to it? Those were your exact words in that report. So we can go ahead and run through these and why they add to that, performance, safety, and accountability.
So, I think I've referred to it several times that we're kind of running a university. We have 13,000 students who have ongoing needs for education, and our environment is changing quickly. So trying to adapt to the learning needs of a whole department is an ongoing piece. So to do that, the Tactics Training and Review Committee was formed. Actually, I don't know the year that it started, but they've been doing it, closer to 2000, to look at any new tactics that come along. When we hear something, when we go to a PERF conference, when we go to IACP, we will bring something back and have a discussion of multiple subject matter experts so that we're not looking at something in a vacuum. But to also assist with training, the process, the Training Assessment Committee, so my team of people who design and develop training, when a new training idea or concept comes up, many times we'll have somebody say, oh, this can just be e-learning. Well, maybe it can be e-learning for detectives, for one group of the department, but we have to look at the ripple effect of where you change something in one area, and we might not be looking, and even the subject matter expert might just be focused on, like I said, detectives, but part of the job of the Training Assessment Committee is to look at, do we have the right modality for the right audience at the right time, and then who needs it all the way through up to the command officers? Because again, you change a procedure down here, what does that mean for a commanding officer? So the Training Assessment Committee will look at both urgency, what is the time frame? Obviously, e-learning is very quick to get many people up to speed, but it might not be the most effective. So it depends on the totality of what we're trying to train to and then what the competency level is. The Professional Advisory Committee is a committee that has been around actually since the Christopher Commission, and it allows, I have a number of community advisory members who have a background in education, but possibly also a special area of interest, most likely related to human relations, so that as we're designing and developing training, I will use this community panel to help me look at and evaluate, are we getting the key issues? I will send them out to community forums and things like that because there's only so many of us. We want to try to maximize the kind of feedback we get, and we can also have them attend department courses to understand both the training process but how we can continue to be upfront with what the community issues are. The RBC recertification, again, just so that you know, every few years, Post will recertify our whole academy and go through everything from safety procedures, the curriculum itself. Post only requires 644 hours of post-related curriculum, and then we have additional LAPD enhancements, if you will. So we want to meet and exceed the standards. That is kind of the mindset that I use with my team constantly. The post-curriculum and training compliance, I think I mentioned to one of you the other day, is that every 2 years, if we haven't put on a course, Post will automatically decertify that course. And so we have to kind of continually look at how often are we using a course? Are we getting the right people? Does it need to be modified to meet new needs? Facilitator certification, because quite often what happens is people ask, do you have the right people teaching? And so at minimum, for the academy, everyone has to go through the AICC, the Academy Instructor Certification course. It is our 40-hour facilitation course, which helps officers to look at the skill set that they're teaching, but how to best adapt that to, as you might have heard us talk about, the whole officer. How do we train the whole officer in training and be more comprehensive? To be able to be a facilitator is a different skill set than many of us have been taught. So we not only do that for academy training, but if you're going to teach in any in-service training, we've kind of raised the bar and said, you need to go to this 40-hour course so that you understand how to train. We want to keep up the skills of our officers, whether they belong to training division or if they're an adjunct instructor outside. The other thing, as they go through that 40-hour course, they will learn that Post also has kind of a level 2 and a level 3, so you can continue to advance your skills as an instructor and facilitator, and that should be a priority, especially if you are doing a lot of training.
Do you want to do this? I want me to.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, and I won't spend much time on this, but we've all three of us been around in training for a while, and we get asked to serve on a lot of committees. If you look at this, Dr. Pennell's been in a pool. I've been on many post committees. IDLIS is International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training, basically the worldwide post. That's the organization there. We spoke at that. Department of Justice comes to us. They know we went through 12 years of the consent decree, hundreds and hundreds of audits, and redesigned training and processes. So we're a reference for them. We've worked very extensively with Chicago and Baltimore and New Orleans and other kind of Philadelphia. So they'll call upon us and ask for our
I think
expertise.
if I can just add to that is the piece that we want you to be aware of is that we continually reach out to our peers or other people in other organizations to get ideas on a wider range of how things are impacting them and how that can be brought to our department in any way.
Because we're going to move this quicker. External review?
All right. So we went and over the last summer looked at 20 different agencies and sent out a survey to get their input on what they are doing. Some of it you already heard from the commander that we found that out of the 20 agencies we had, we got 19 responses. These were the different agencies that we looked at. And I think the challenge that we really sought is talking a common language. And so many, I need to let you know some of the limitations. They had different definitions. It's not all the same thing, and different levels of accountability. The mandates vary across states, so even though they might have a post state governing body for their agency, it doesn't mean that they have 43 learning domains. It doesn't mean all their post standards could be very different. So trying to speak the same language across this was a challenge. They have different training requirements. Some are annual, some are biannual, some are even triannual. So what they're required to do when we're trying to really get an apples to apples comparison was a challenge. The other thing that we see is some agencies do centralized, some do decentralized. And just to let you know, we have a hybrid of that where our core concepts are taught in a centralized fashion and then reinforced in a decentralized fashion. We want people in the divisions to be talking about training issues all the time. We want to be a learning organization. So we want to have department certified lesson plans that the training coordinators are allowed to do in the divisions. But, and I've kind of explained this to my staff as the big rocks, that need to go in the jar. Start with academy and all these different department promotional places where you'll come back to a centralized function. But then the decentralized training is all the sand that fills in the rest of the jar around the training of an officer.
Does the decentralized training that goes on at the division level, is that run by the captains? Who determines on the divisional level what and when their officers are getting
So
training?
during any 2-year period, which, and again, we keep going in a 2-year period because of the difficulty in getting everybody trained, but also because post uses a 2-year requirement for the 24 hours of post training that they require of all of our officers every 2 years. So in that format, we have training coordinators at every division, whether it's a geographical division or a specialized division, and they will come to the training coordinators meeting. We give them sort of a buffet of here's the different courses that could be offered this year, and they will choose for their division probably the things that make the most sense, but they are all department certified courses.
Got it.
Does that make
Chief
sense?
Moore, is that something that is discussed at CompStat?
Yes, primarily the compliance with the mandated training for FTO supervisors classes. Those are the two primary areas, but then also perishable skills. Of the 24 hours required, every 2
24-hour
years, 14
requirements.
hours. 14 hours is perishable skills, and this is pursuit driving, use of force, and that is it's one of the metrics is on the CompStat inspection. But what we generally do with that is generally look to see is point it when it's deficient. And we applaud when it's happening, but for the CompStat inspection, the length of it, it's not a constant focus because generally our commands are 95% compliant, and we just have to deal with the outliers. And so we save the CompStat inspection for when they're more broad. So we can do it. It's managed in there, but it's not a primary focus of CompStat.
Just some other things to keep in mind. 20 different agencies. In some respects, it's 20 different agencies. The sample size here, it's hard to get a consistent trend of what everyone is doing because of the things I described. The other thing is that when we are calling other agencies and asking for their assistance, it's self-disclosed data. It's kind of what they want to share with us, and it's a very different thing than maybe a site visit. We are trying to rely on whomever we are working with or have been referred to, and so it also goes through that lens where I'm talking about cultural and other types of bias, because sometimes we're asking a question and we feel like we're being very upfront, but depending on those officers or their training background or ideas, they are, I wouldn't, they're sharing with us to the best of their ability to answer our question, but those are things we have to take into account. The other thing I would say is that there's a tendency in police training, I think, to focus on the number of hours, like the number of hours are the best. If you have more hours, it's better. But it doesn't necessarily equate to effectiveness of training. And so I think that is where we're trying to, if we are going to take the resources and department energy to put people in seats, then we really have an onus to make sure that it's effective kind of training and not just check the box training. So, or even, and I want to be careful when we were talking about the concepts and things like that, lecture isn't bad in and of itself, but 8 hours of lecture could be. Yeah. And the same thing with reality-based training. You need to do different things constantly because otherwise people kind of get lulled into expecting what's next. And the challenge that we have, and kind of the, for law enforcement training, it's a good problem to have. They have so many varied experiences and things that we can challenge them on. Are we challenging the whole person as I often reference? The other thing that we found, we had in our sample of 20, we had 11 states certified by a post. We had 4 that were under CALIA. We had 5 that had no certification. And again, there's no national certification, if you will, that goes across all departments. Sometimes people, when they say the police, they feel like everyone's getting the same thing. And again, when we do research across the country, we find that's actually not the case. All agencies reported that they have some kind of de-escalation taught in training, but it's often not called by that name. So we're, and it's interesting because, again, we've tried to look at de-escalation to include tactics. Some people just include verbal de-escalation. So again, sometimes depending how you've defined it or they think that they're responding to what you want, they might give you just their course on verbal de-escalation. So 13 had no approved definition of de-escalation, 7 had defined de-escalation, and 5 included de-escalation in a policy. This is very miserable to read, and it's only kind of just recapturing what I just told you. These, when we start looking at external agencies, again, with the whole 20, it's hard to kind of put in a short discussion what the different agencies all saw. Again, for us on communication skills, we might use an acronym such as LEAPS, which is listen, empathize, ask, paraphrase, and summarize, and that's taught reviewed quite a bit in the MHIT course that we've talked about. Other agencies might talk about crisis intervention. Verbal judo was a term that came out somewhere in the 80s or 90s. I think
25 years ago.
our department trained on that in the 90s, and so some agencies are using verbal judo. But I guess the thing all agencies seem to be trying to come at it from different directions, but we have to kind of look at when we're comparing our agency to another agency, is changing an acronym going to be the most effective? It looks like we're all looking at communication skills, and again, key trends that went throughout: empathy, time, distance, and cover. They might call it something different, team-oriented tactics or tactical positioning, but generally we cover those concepts in time, distance, and cover. And then we really like to spend more time in our scenario-based looking at how you debrief, because we really feel that the debrief is the place where you get the most learning. I want to be careful to this because this is a lot of information on a slide, and I don't know. I think what you get to see is roughly agencies are doing about a 6-month academy. Some do a little bit more. Some of the agencies that do more are including their 40-hour mental health course at the end of their academy. So they'll do their academy training and then kind of have these add-on courses that they do at the end of it.
Yeah, when you see like 1401 in Dallas, they're putting in-service training at the back end of the academy, so it makes the academy hours look bigger. But it's just, we prefer to give you the academy, let you get some experience in the field, and then like police science leadership, bring you back in where you actually have talked to the community, you have solved some problems. It's a better way to do it than just smack it right at the end of an academy.
Remind me how long the PSL 1 is?
PSL 1 is actually 84 hours all total. And then, well, anyway. The other thing that we looked at are the 5 largest agencies. There was, New York was the only one that had a definition of de-escalation, but it was pretty new at the time. And so I think what we're seeing across the nation as we talk to our colleagues and peers is that people are kind of in a, this is something that they're talking about. They're either in the process of doing it, but we haven't seen something that is a long established, here's our de-escalation course that we've done in this way for the last 10 years. It's more a concept of like post-integrated tactical communications in 2002 into department training, that their agencies are dealing with that as well. I'm just going to keep going.
So is there a slide, because I noticed that the academy hours are lower, were the lowest in both of those categories, whether it was the top agencies or the slide before. Is there, and I agree that perhaps it's not always best to have all the training before they actually have any experience. Is there a slide that has a comparison of, years after through year 3 of an officer's on job on the force?
No, we didn't look at it from that perspective where, like, say, the first 3 or 5 years, these are the stuff you get. I think you will see a slide in a moment, though, that will show the breakdown of typical in-service. I think that hasn't come up, right, San Diego? Yeah, you'll see that in a second.
As a follow-up, I would be interested in having an analysis of that, how we compare over the first 5 years of an officer's career to some of the other departments.
Do that.
I think that is the other piece that allows us to, as we continue to develop the PSL program and to look at our in-service training, is to build something in a methodical way of how someone gets through their career. We have enough courses where we can already influence that. So I think the thing that we wanted to point out here, when we ask agencies how many hours of de-escalation, people don't keep track of their academy hours in that way. So we went through and tried to determine that. We came up with 188 hours, but none of the other agencies had it actually defined exactly as we have this many de-escalation hours.
That's asking them, quite frankly, to do a lot of work. We put a sort of a team on going through our entire 912 hours of academy. We're going to go back for the year-end report and try to get that information, but that's asking them to do a tremendous amount of work for us.
So I think to continue the external review, we focused specifically on the agencies that the Inspector General also had brought up, and to kind of be able to compare a little bit closer the mandates and new training that Post has. So on the middle column is LAPD. We're required by Post to have 24 hours every 2 years. With our training plan, looking at our mandated training and the training, remember, as I mentioned, we give this buffet of training of things that are required. Some things are mandated for all officers, some things are, we looked at our training plan, and we have roughly 49 hours of training that we're having officers do every 2 years. So as we go down that, the average number of training hours in a year in 2014 was 56. The average number of hours in a year was 52. So even while the training plan is 49 hours for those 2 years, the average in that 2-year period was 108 training hours. So LAPD officers are getting quite a lot of training because we have sort of the luxury of the 149 courses that we have, and that we have it mandated at certain promotional points like FTO, sergeant, command development. So that's kind of why that's
So,
high.
with respect to some of the softer skills, what's the metric that you use to determine effectiveness of training?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
So, with respect, so for instance, I know if it's weapons training, there's specific metrics to determine whether or not that training has been effective, and whether or not, the department is doing well in a particular area. With respect to some of those less objective or softer skill sets,
Right.
what metric do you use to determine that the training is actually effective? How can you tell?
Well, certainly while they're in the academy, there is a post-scenario matrix that we are required to do on every scenario that comes through that looks at a number of different things: critical thinking, communication skills, command presence.
Force options.
Right. Are they putting the whole piece together? They wouldn't just analyze, communication skills. It would be analyzing the total.
I'm just trying to, again, and I do want to tell you how much I appreciate the extended conversation and Chief Moore, your interjections to sort of contextualize these matters. And clearly, the evolution and the continued design and the addition of training, and even the training post academy, second year, third year, I imagine speaks to some sense that there will be something that's accomplished that is important and that meets certain objectives of the department with respect to the officers that we want to have in the field. So what I'm trying, and I applaud that.
Incorporate a couple of things. First of all, like on the 10-hour use of force class, one of the specific items that they did was a testing for the soft skills. The person taking the 10-hour class, going through the scenarios, had to demonstrate, not just be able to hear it, but they had to demonstrate the application. If they didn't, then they failed. And those are not, so to your question of how are we measuring in service the desired behavior? The answer is yes. And yet it's an area that I think we can further refine and make sure that we have a scorecard on fair and impartial policing as we teach that skill or that awareness or bias that we have. How do we make sure our officers are understanding expected performance? So we can talk about it, and then there's a point of testing it. To the larger macro, this speaks to the Department's 2015 use of force report and the changes that have occurred in service, both in beginning in late part of 14, into 15 and 16, and marching on, with the hopes, the belief that the training of the whole person in these added skills and competencies, not just the expectation, but that we'll see the behavior and we'll witness it by the metrics of things that we count, including for instance, officer-involved shootings. At the end of the day, the application of force, what other instances, and some of this is qualitative and some of it is quantitative. The quantitative, it's easy to count in many instances. The qualitative nature of it is the complexity of we don't control the entire environment. So we only control a portion, our response. But what is the response of the officers to the threat and to the environment that they're now dealing with, and how has that changed today than, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago? So I think the department, I know the department would look to the commission as well as to the public. What are the scorecard areas that we see? And the hopes is that the explanation, the discussion of what in-service and how it's evolving is meant to deal with the challenges in law enforcement today than say 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. And there has been a historical walk, if you will, and these professionals here represent 30, 40 years of experience. So to them, they've seen that walk. Today, we're trying to explain that evolution over time. But your key today is, what are you doing today? And how do you measure it? And I think that's it's a balancing act of asserting that these changes are necessary to help and improve and better prepare the officer of today. But the outcomes are still before us. So we're not done in understanding what those are.
Just
Thank you, Chief.
and I'll actually try to expand upon that, and we're going out of training into personnel. Probably about a decade ago, we switched our evaluation of officers, and actually, in fact, everybody below the rank of captain to a standards-based assessment. And what that meant is, prior to that, if you went to my package and pulled it out and looked at ratings from 20 years ago, it would just be an X, a minus, or a empty box. On a topic, it would say whatever competency, and it would be a plus. And you might have a paragraph or two at the bottom, but that was pretty much it. We had a deputy chief who studied this a lot, Mark Perez, and he said, hey, we're doing this wrong. The trend in the country is to look at it. We ought to be rating you on what we expect you to do out there in the field. So now when we write a rating, say for a police officer, you have to write comment cards or commendations or supportive actions that we want to see them do, or in fact, actions they did that we didn't want them to see them do. That forms the basis of the rating. So when you get to things like when I would write a lot of those, when I was a captain or lieutenant, you'd write them on how many community meetings did you go to? What was the effectiveness? Did you solve a community problem out there? So we're now, in fact, holding them accountable to actually actions as a police officer out in the field. He was really smart on that, because after he had done that, IACP and COPS Sabor program did a whole seminar on it, and they came back and they used him actually as a model, saying that's the best way to do it. Now, the next evolution may be to even get the community more involved in that evaluation process. So we may want to drive the crime rate down at 5th and Main, but they may want us to do quality improvements there. And so we get more feedback that way, and you write the ratings to that. But that's just like how you do it in a personnel setting. Hopefully that added something.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I just concur, it's very difficult to measure soft skills. Social sciences have had a hard time measuring definitively soft skills, and so we need to continually evolve that. I think where we try to capture that often in our scenario training is in the debriefs, where we give people feedback on how they're doing. But then the next leap to how they're doing in the field is the challenge of the rating that we're seeing. If I can continue going on. So when we looked at our comparison with San Diego Police Department, one of the things that they identified is their advanced officer training course. When we look at actually what's in the advanced officer training course, and I know there's a lot on here, but to identify that because San Diego is also under post in California, in their advanced officer training course, how they are addressing their 24 hours of post training has to do with their advanced officer training course. And so that 40-hour course, while it might be a standalone, is capturing the things that we capture as well. Tactical communications, we might call it arrest and control, they call it defensive tactics, firearms. EVOC is our driving course and requirements. First aid is included in there, and then they'll have a day of scenarios in there. They have bias policing, civil liabilities, wellness, and human trafficking included in that AOTC course. On the LAPD side, what you see is the preservation of life training that we did last summer began the discussion on building public trust. Well, not began, continued it
Yep.
on constitutional policing, mental illness training, use of force de-escalation, and then our other designed for ongoing training is our use of force update course and our MACTAC and crowd control.
And I think, Commissioner Johnson, when you would ask about a 3 or 5 year, I think you'd see this is a 2 year. This would be basically looking at a 2 year snapshot. That we're very similar to, you're going to see several slides come up here. The main topics will be similar. It's just what you want to concentrate in that 2 year. They concentrate on human trafficking, civil liabilities. We were on to the left, like mental illness, constitutional policing. But I don't think there'll be a major difference. The difference will be in how many certified courses that they are allowed, and how what is the culture of the department in allowing them to take as many of those courses as possible.
When we looked at the comparison with LAPD and Dallas, Dallas has a similar core course that they do 40 hours every 2 years, which includes their reality-based training, and then patrol gets an added 8 hours of reality-based training. Again, we are similar in that we have a training plan that has 49 hours of mandated training for our officers every 2 years, at least in the last 2 year cycle. They have CIT and we have MHIT, so some of the similarities are there. Dallas is an interesting comparison because we have 149 certified courses, and they are stating they have somewhere between 150 and 180 certified courses. I'm not exactly sure where the variance is, but that was what was reported to us. So I think that Dallas is one of the places that we would like to go and do a site visit. We're kind of establishing a team to get together and go look at some of those comparisons more closely. Because I think the other piece is, in contrast to San Diego that has 9 certified courses, looking at comparable agencies who are dealing with some of the load that we're dealing with, and then how do they continually, are they infusing, are they going topic by topic? The other piece I think that we wanted to highlight also in our training is, well, we don't have a reality-based training unit, because to us, reality-based training is another modality. So we wouldn't have a lecture-based training unit. We wouldn't have a PowerPoint training unit. We have units. We look at the content of what it is we're trying to teach, and then we identify what is the mix of training that is the most important to get that concept across, and to, again, train the whole officer, train them in a team, and train them through the event. Again, when we looked at the substance of the core training reflects assessment, defensive tactics, emotional fitness, firearms, scenarios. Again, on the left-hand side, you'll see that many of the similar topics are covered. Again, when we get to go on a site visit, perhaps we could examine that a little more closely about what the differences might be. Any questions on that?
No,
or
no.
anything you want to? Okay. With Las Vegas, they have 12 hours every year, but as you can see, that just means 24 hours every 2 years. So it's a very similar thing. They have an advanced officer course that they have a 9-hour course and a use of force refresher that they do every year. So that gives them 13 hours every 2 years so that they can meet their requirements as well. They have a CRT course. We call it MHIT. I don't know how many certified courses, but given kind of the discussion around Las Vegas, they came and talked to us in 2011 when they did some of their significant changes, and I know that some of their team training comes out of some of the conversations that we had with them. It'd be nice to see how they implemented that, so that is another
Go look at them.
area that we're putting together, again, a training team to go and look more in-depth at their training and how, especially the team piece, how they've been able to replicate that. Anything else you want to add on that?
No.
Again, the challenge here is their AOT training is the 9-hour training. They have defensive tactics, firearms scenarios, and use of force de-escalation. The topics that we cover in our training period as well. I want to be sure to say this is by no means the totality of all their training. This is just what they are requiring of everybody. They might do the same things that we do along the lines of detectives or different specialized groups as well. We didn't add Las Vegas up there.
Yeah,
So we have site visits
it'll be
planned for
3.
Dallas, San Diego, just mostly because they're close and they're accessible, and they're also under Post, California. We did find that I think through this process we have some improved interagency collaboration. We've looked at various ways to teach de-escalation depending on the focus, and I think without a site visit to actually see how they do it, it kind of makes it, a discussion, or you're looking off of somebody's PowerPoints, and
Right.
it doesn't really get to the how of they do it.
You're going to go to Las Vegas also?
Yeah.
Yes. But I guess what we're seeing is this collaboration that everyone is partnering and trying to look at what are the best ways of managing this.
In addition to all the best practices back and forth, everybody talking to each other, there are a number of universities and organizations and professional think tanks that are looking at these issues as well, and adding in inequity issues and all kinds of out of balance issues as well. Is that part of your instructor's curriculum? It's not just everybody talking to each other. It's because there's a lot of really good research coming out.
Yes, I think it's actually both keeping up with it and making sure everyone gets infused with it. So what we will do is we do have, we talked about the teams before, but for example, our instructors who have a specialty in human relations, we might send them to an outside training to try and infuse different training. But I think what you're capturing as well as what sometimes I get from my professional advisory committee, that somebody who is in a field that may seem different than ours has a best practice in negotiations or in some different area. And so even if we can learn a little bit from something else, it might not change our whole curriculum, but it gives us an enhancement or a different kind of scenario that makes something pop for our officers.
Chief Murphy, can you discuss the upcoming visit to PERF, the New Orleans demonstration site, relative to what was presented at IACP?
Yeah, we're going to send a team of people there. We were just down at IACP. They presented ICATS, which I actually have right here, the folder. It's the first 2 presentations that they did. I actually spoke at, Dr. Pennell spoke at one. It's a way of basically providing training. We're lucky that we're 13,000 people. I have almost 300 people assigned to training division. What IACP wanted to do, working with PERF, is design training. It's called Integration of Communication Assessment and Tactics. It's their model for teaching de-escalation, is the simplest way to think about it. So we'll send a team of experts down there, watch them do this. They did have many experts participate in the design of this training. We think they do some very, very good things. So we're going to watch it and see if there's some good ideas that we can come back and steal, quite frankly, and build it into our training. In addition to this, Commissioner, to answer your question, we work very extensively with many universities, depending upon the topic. We're working with UCI on a research institute where we can come to them, and PERF kind of plays that role now. PERF is Police Executive Research Forum. They will take a topic like de-escalation, study it, come up with books like this. Well, we're going to build that relationship with the local universities, and we could go to them so that we could have academic-based research on topics. So that's already in play right now. Dr. Erwin Chermanesky is big fan of it with Chief Beck. So, and I can go into it, but we have on the table already deals with many universities depending upon the topics. Well, we've been talking a long time, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I guess the other thing that we looked at as we came across the different definitions, as we talked to different people, at the same time as a parallel process where we were looking at the tactical directive on de-escalation. And so I think because everything's been happening at once, it's not so much that this presentation is here's where we were, here's what other agencies are doing, but we've already been developing where are we going. Because I think the next step in really solidifying the discussion on de-escalation is to clarify all the points and make sure that when we ask for it, we can find exactly where it is. Whether or not other agencies do that or not is irrelevant. We want to be able to do that for our department. And that's where the tactical directive comes in play. So we collected definitions, training, and policies to integrate into the tactical directive. And that has been going through the Tactical Training Review Committee and has recently
talk about
just
that.
got signed off. So,
Okay. Okay. All right, I'm going to go through this one quickly for you because we've been doing this for a while. You're going to see slides on the new TAC directive. That's basically going to define how we're going to teach de-escalation. It will define basically an acronym in there. I'll go through that real quickly. We'll integrate this throughout training. We already identified the schools that it should be in. We have a game plan that Dr. I think had talked about already. We'll continue to talk about our training plan. We always have a training plan in effect. And at the end, the training calendar. All right, so we created a source document, which is the Tactical Directive on De-escalation. Basically, all that research, talking to everybody. We looked at the way that they designed either their policies, their training bulletins, their curriculum on de-escalation, and stole the best of those ideas and came up with ours, quite frankly. That went through the TTRC, so the Officer Inspector General was part of that. Their staff helped us write that. They were part of the discussions. So that was done. And of course, on a sidetrack is the use of force policy. That's basically a meet and confer. Don't worry about that when that gets approved. We have a vehicle to introduce that. That shouldn't be a problem at all. We'll be able to do e-learning, and of course, that will be built into the whole big laundry list of classes that we've identified already. I'm not going to read that. That is...
I think it's been circulated to everybody.
It's been circulated, but it took a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, quite frankly. Again, those words in there are taken from many different other definitions throughout the country. We think that that's pretty concise for us. On this, in the tactical directive, we love acronyms on the LAPD, and it does give us a vehicle and training for the officers to be able to remember. So if we say to them, especially if they get involved in a serious use of force, like an officer-involved shooting, they will get and they will be interviewed, and they will ask them, "What did you do to de-escalate the situation?" So each one.
Successful de-escalation happens when police are not.
Ma'am, you're disrupting the meeting. Can you please have a seat?
Support and resources to take care of ourselves and each other. Without your
Ma'am,
armed
can you
murderous forces
please
in our
leave the
city.
meeting?
That's what successful de-escalation.
Ma'am, I'm asking you to leave the meeting.
I have to go because y'all have been taking
Of course
up
you do.
so much space with this facade and this fake.
Anyway, all of those planning assessment, it's in the tactical directive. I can go ahead and I can explain it to you, but I think you could read it, and it's pretty straightforward. All right, this is the training plan. I'll just talk. This is going to go over to Dr. Pinnell, but basically we have a training plan to roll out the new tactical directive. We've already internally within training division, we had the draft of the tactical directive, so we trained our own staff. We have a game plan to train others, the adjuncts that will be teaching outside, and that should roll out pretty quickly. One thing on this slide I do want to point out, POST is going to play a huge role in this. Anytime you change curriculum, that's called modification of curriculum, and that stops the class. You can't teach it. So we've been negotiating with POST to see if we can take this as a tactical directive and put it in there without having to stop the class for months and then do a rewrite of the curriculum. That is in work. If that doesn't happen, it will cost us a lot of time.
So we have already met with our post consultants and gone over that, but just to say, so for example, with MHIT, which has use of force in it, has de-escalation in it already, but what we want to do is be using consistent terms. And so we're hoping that because POST has already reviewed our existing curriculum, it will be a small modification, but just to be realistic, sometimes it'll take 60 days or more, and we don't want to stop our MHIT training at all. So again, it just takes a lot of collaboration to find out how to do this.
Yeah, and that's going to be a challenge, but we're working on it.
And just to the commissioners, let's assure you that Chief Beck, myself, Chief Villegas, these will be addressed with POST at the highest levels.
Great.
So obviously, POST is desirous of agencies being able to be nimble and evolve and adapt. They just want to ensure that it's well thought out and it withstands scrutiny. But that bureaucracy should not stand in the way of us making these modifications, as you can see.
We have studied before officer-involved shootings, certainly with the hope to reduce the number of them. Going back about 2 to 4 years ago, we did a very comprehensive study on it. At the time, it was on command and control. We were seeing some shootings on multi-officer, multi-rounds, in jargon, contagious fire. So we paid attention to that, but that spread, and ultimately we ended up doing 26 recommendations to training. Most of those are complete. We changed the qual course, a lot of our shooting. We introduced more scenarios into shooting. There are some that came out of that, like police science leadership, that we're still building. We have PSL 1 launched, PSL 2 is in design, 3 will design next year. So that's that. Basically, we've been doing a lot of work with that. Training plan. Part of training, too, is the equipment that you have as the officers. This was talked about earlier. Commander Smith had talked about it. We have a 40-millimeter pilot program going on out there in 4 different stations. And so far, it's been very, very successful. The sample size is small. We've only used it 4 times, to my knowledge. 3 of the times were successful. But I will come back, and I believe that the OIG office is going to put a report on Leslie
Can we
too.
please have quiet in the audience, please, so we can continue to hear the presentation?
So that is out there, that testing 40 millimeters. OC spray, it's just a hotter spray in a gel base. We're testing that right now. That looks kind of promising. Beanbag shotgun rounds we've put in the car so that the officers can have access. We certainly want them to have access to less lethal. That can help prevent any lethal situation. FN 303 is in the jails. It's specific to what happens in a jail. The other one's ballistic shields. That got approved. We did extensive research on that. That shield can now, I think we'll be the first in the country that will stop a rifle for patrol. Rifle round. It's real important that on use of force communication strategy, that we have a strategy, and that really working with the media is a big part of that strategy. So working with Arif Ali Khan, we've designed a series of kind of media days. We did one about 3 or 4 months ago. We brought 40 members of the media in. We showed them our training, our less lethal. We actually mimicked an FID shooting, an officer-involved shooting. Very insightful, got great press conference coverage out of that. We brought them also, the media, to the use of force update course that many of you have seen. We got a lot of good press coverage out of that. We will bring them back in for the mental health intervention training and to have a specific community relationship. One, we find that we need the media. They're our partners to get the messaging out on use of force. They're a big part of this, and we want to work all we can with them. And by the way, the command staff has been trained already on de-escalation. In June 2nd, we trained them for about 6 or 8 hours. And on November 17th, in 2 weeks from this Thursday, we're bringing them back for a whole nother day of de-escalation. So they would have got back-to-back training sessions on this particular topic.
I think just quickly is what we want to have on the November 17th one is the new de-escalation tactical directive, and be talking about how they can be an influencer in their divisions to make sure that the terminology is being replicated in multiple areas so that we get familiar with how to have more discussions about de-escalation and make that kind of infused throughout department conversation.
We always have a training calendar. It will go ahead and identify all the mandates that we have to meet for that particular 2-year cycle, so the perishable skills training and so on. There are a lot of mandates that police officers in this state have to get, so that's on an actual calendar. But we know we have to design another 10-hour course. It'll be rally-based training. It'll be heavily focused on scenarios. You know, we'll have to have a vehicle to roll the 40 millimeter out in this new tactical directive, so we are designing that as we speak. That will be part of our next two-year cycle. And again, this is in conclusion that we did create the new TAC directive. We got a whole game plan to roll it out there. It's going to be integrated into multiple, I think it's 39 courses off the top of my head that we'll build that in, and we'll integrate it and write it into all the curriculum. We're going to pilot the new less lethal, the 40 millimeters, the OC spray, and so on, and continue implementing our training plan and continue to try to create the best practices possible so that lethal force goes down, continues to trend down, and obviously we have an emphasis on de-escalation in all of our encounters with the public. Questions?
Yeah, let me ask you a 30,000-foot question. You've made a presentation today on what you're doing, what the changes have been in response to the recommendations of the commission, the chief, et cetera. What have you learned from it?
What I would say after doing 20 surveys, and 19 of them responded back, and talking with people, this is the number one subject in the country, without question, de-escalation, trying to reduce use of force. What I've also learned is that we're pretty good at this. You go into this wondering if we're behind others. I feel we're pretty strong in our ability to provide the training, to design the training. We have I believe, using the best concepts, the problem-based learning and facilitation. So it's sort of reinforced for us the path that we're on. Now, I believe we should do more reality-based training. We should do more force-on-force training. It's expensive. So if I could get more money, we're not opposed to it. It just costs us money to shoot simunitions and all that, but we ought to do that more frequently, quite frankly. And I don't think that you'd find a law enforcement agency in the country that would say otherwise. It's just money it boils down to.
I think one other thing I'd want to highlight about, especially the review and talking to other agencies and assessing our own training, that while the concepts of de-escalation have been taught in different ways, when they're referred to as different things, if you went and pooled 10 officers, they might all emphasize de-escalation, but they would emphasize it with different language, maybe emphasis on different elements. I think what our tactical directive is going to allow us to do is really harness these elements that we've been teaching all over the place and make sure that it's defined similarly, that we get it reinforced, not just for the specific incident, but what's happening in the division, what's happening in the community as well. De-escalation is a much bigger discussion than just a traffic stop. It's bigger in terms of what's happening in our communities as well. So we think there's a role for everyone to play in that having, we actually, I think maybe in 2009 is when we really put another emphasis on training all of our use of force experts on, and so this will allow us to actually retrain and emphasize this directive with our use of force experts and look at all the relevant ways in which we can infuse it into training. So I look forward to where we're going with this because it'll allow us to have that shared language and conversation.
I think also one of the other things taken away from this was never stop our quest and search for best practices. And it doesn't matter where it comes from within the nation. It's just that we have to be able to continue to do our research, find the best practices, and sometimes we may teach something to someone else and they may add something to it that may help us in the long run.
I reviewed that PERF report, and I thought it was there's some very compelling stuff in there. I was glad that you brought it up. So after you go through the process with PERF and reviewing how they're recommending it be specifically taught and visiting Vegas, Dallas, and San Diego, it'd be great to have you do a follow-up report on specifically what you've learned and what you'd be looking to incorporate.
Absolutely.
I appreciate, and I think it's essential that these tactics are integrated into so many of our courses. Is there a specific course that really focuses on these are de-escalation skills that you should be thinking about integrating across these wide variety of situations that you will come across?
Well, I think certainly our use of force update course that we've been training everyone in, we have a debrief sheet that has de-escalation throughout the debrief and also reverence for human life in that debrief and emphasized. We recently I think our instructors were very forward thinking. Once we made available to them, they used Patrol to rewrite those debriefing sheets to try and emphasize again those terms. So what will happen again in this next in the next 2-year period where we're training what is going to be mandated of all department employees, that tactical directive will then be infused in there as well, and that's the new upcoming one that we just emphasized.
Yeah, it will be. We'll integrate this in any course that is going to be approved without question. So the communication skills, the tactical concept, Patrol, it will be written into everything. And I'm confident that the officer's ability to handle and de-escalate a situation will increase.
Okay. And then I brought this up earlier, and you don't have to answer me now, but if you could come back to us, or if you can answer us now, when would be a good time frame to get that analysis on the number of hours of training we have in the academy from the start of the academy through years 3, from the academy through years 5, comparing the LAPD to other departments?
What part of that may be in that year-end report we're working on right now. Because we have like
would be a great
3 or
place to
4
include
presentation we kind of owe to you. Could you give us to the first quarter of next year?
That would actually be a great, if we could include it in our annual report, that would be a great place to include it. And if we just did that and include it permanently in that annual report, that would be great.
I don't know how difficult we'll be able to get that this short, because we got to get
Right.
that in a month or
We've
so.
sent out letters from the chief to the other chiefs.
Okay. All right,
Requesting
well,
this
if you can't include it,
information,
you
but-
can't.
If not, by the first quarter, we could come back
Okay.
and do it.
That's fine. Who is Post answerable to?
Well, state of California.
The Attorney General, or is it?
I'm not sure if it, is it Attorney General? Yeah, I believe it is. And I know that they're appointed by the governor. I think the director of Post is.
Public comment will be open on this item in a few minutes. So if you submit a card, we'll make sure you'll have your time.
Let me add to that. I forget, I haven't gone to a Post Commission meeting in a while, but Post has a commission just like you. And the commissioner is made up of law enforcement executives from throughout the state, and they serve a term, I think it's a couple years. I know Sheriff Jim McDonald was on there, and a whole bunch of people are on that. So that they hold commission meetings quarterly, if I remember correctly. I haven't been to one in a while, but they have a commission. But ultimately, I believe the Attorney General is like the boss.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Can we open up public comment, please? On
We
this
have
item?
13 comment cards. The first 4, Beth Kemp, Akili, Paula Miner, and the Red Chief.
I will start by saying I requested a month ago for the training manuals and the training resources for LAPD, and I'd still like to see them. I think they need to be made public and put on LAPD's website so we can all see how people are trained. But, you know, this is really disturbing because what I just heard was 2 hours full of bullshit. If you guys are really out of touch with reality and really out of touch with how this department operates, you say there's a 24-hour mental health evaluation unit. That is a lie, a lie. The SMART team doesn't even work in Skid Row where it's most needed. I've been in 3 separate mental health situations in the past 2 months. At no time was there a mental health evaluation unit available. Oh, wait, once there was, but they didn't speak Spanish, so they were freaking useless. You know, you talk about how these officers get training, and the amount of training you talk about is less than the amount of training that I received as a suicide prevention counselor to talk on the phone to kids. And you're dealing with people in person. Okay, this is not how you practice. And I want to read this out of this report that you just said. It says, unnecessarily or prematurely drawing or exhibiting a firearm limits an officer's alternatives in controlling a situation, creates unnecessary anxiety on the part of citizens, and may result in an unwarranted or accidental discharge of the firearm. An officer's decision to draw or exhibit a firearm should be based on the tactical situation and the officer's reasonable belief that there is a substantial risk to the situation may escalate to the point where deadly force may be justified. When an officer is determined that the use of deadly force is not necessary, the officer shall, as soon as practicable, secure or holster the firearm. Yet I see officers jumping out of their cars with less lethals, with guns drawn, with tear gas on a regular basis. It happened on a mental health situation just 2 weeks ago. We had a rifle in our faces. I've been shot in the face by these less lethals you discuss, and I've seen others shot with these 40 millimeter grenades, and they do real damage to people. You want to continue to do damage while talking about doing less force? That's bullshit. You all need to be held accountable for the lack of training that you give these officers.
The next speaker, Keely. Keely left. Okay.
Next.
Paula Miner.
Akili left, but he did leave some comments with me, and I concur with some of the things that occurred. One of the big things the officer in the middle started with is that you cannot train or teach anything that is not in policy. So much of what we're talking about today has not been formally implemented into the policy. The new, so-called new tactics or new approach or new policy for de-escalation has not been implemented. So a lot of what we're talking about is what's gone in the past, what may be going on right now, but is not new, is not a change. So we're really concerned about that. The other thing that we've heard is there's no racial component mentioned, and we feel that is very, very serious. You cannot ignore that when the majority of what happens, the majority of lack of de-escalation happens in black and brown communities. In those communities, what occurs is control and suppression, not de-escalation. And the last point Akili and I would like to make to the commission, I know Mr. Johnson is gone, is that when you review the officer-involved trainings, that officer-involved killings, in your closed sessions, when you do that evaluation, there should be some question about whether or not any of these officers have had any of this illustrious training that we're talking about, because we understand there are 10,000 officers. We're comparing ourselves to Dallas, Las Vegas, much smaller training forces that can do things a lot differently. It's difficult to reach all the officers that need to be reached, especially those that are in our community doing that killing. So, you know, when you talk about the trend has reduced, it doesn't feel like it's a reduction. You know that LA leads all cities in the nation this year and last year with the number of officer-involved trainings. So I just say there's a lot that needs to be added to this. And the other thing you don't have
Next speaker,
is a
please.
time period for implementation.
You want to come up?
Come on yourself.
The Red Chief Hunt, followed by Prentice Jenkins, Mariela Saba, and Michael Novick.
It's really a big joke. The training process that I listened to just right now, I think one of the best policies what Chief McDonald had is just because you can doesn't mean you do. It's been a lot of killings in the African American communities because a guy was running with a gun, not pointing a gun. And this is where the mistake is made. If he's running with a gun and he's a teenager, let him run in the house. You guys got the helicopter. The helicopter's up there watching him. Let his parents turn him in. And you guys still go ahead and shoot the cat. The guy running in the back, and you shoot him in the back. That's murder. And this is what you guys failed with. Just because you can doesn't mean you do. And this is where LAPD always fuck up at, because they always do. And when people come up dead and people's kids come up dead and you guys can't be accountable for this shit, it's just bullshit. Let the people run into wherever they run into. You don't run into the Nicholson Gardens and then don't expect a dog fight. It's just bullshit. You guys know better than that as police officers. Whoever's over there know how to de-escalate the situation by doing nothing. It was a car chase going in Hollywood. They let the people stop, get out the car. The sheriff then came and got them about 10 minutes later after they got through doing what they do. I seen a car chase yesterday where the police was hammering at the windows and stuff like that. They're too aggressive. Instead of just letting the guy come out in his own time, they start hammering at the windows and taking things way too far.
That guy was trying to kill himself, you know.
Who?
The guy inside the car.
Well, okay, let him kill himself instead of LAPD. You know, and that looks a lot better than you guys breaking in the windows and trying to be too aggressive and trying to handle that situation. The best situation I ever seen when Matt Johnson came out and said the sheriff let them guys go out for 10 minutes and beat themselves and then came and got them. That's de-escalation.
Prentice Jenkins.
Mr. Jenkins?
Prentice Jenkins. Good morning. Vice President Soboroff, commissioners. Instead of talking about de-escalation, I'd like to show de-escalation. That was the incident yesterday where the guy was trying to kill himself. Now, what the officers did, to their credit, to the commissioner's credit, to the commission's credit, your credit, Commissioner Soboroff,
Well, that wasn't the LAPD, was it?
that was LAPD.
Was it us or was it Sheriff?
Yeah.
Okay.
To their credit, it was de-escalation. They shot the window out with the pepper spray. Went in, got the man, brought him out. Nobody kicked him in the head. Nobody beat him. They handcuffed him and took him and delivered him to the justice system. That's textbook de-escalation. And that is what we're talking about here. It's one thing to talk about, it's another thing to actually see it. I saw it yesterday. I believe in what Malcolm X says. I'm for the truth no matter who tells it. I'm for justice no matter who gets it. So whoever said that, I'm sorry. Whoever said that, it's still the truth, right? It's still the truth, whoever said it. And so we're looking at de-escalation is the most important thing. And de-escalation keeps people alive. This man is alive because of de-escalation, because of what we've been discussing here and what we've been implementing here. If you actually implement that, guess what? More people in the community will live, and also more officers won't be injured or won't be killed. This is about continuing a dialogue between the police and the community. And the only way to do that is to do what we're doing right here.
Thank you, sir.
Michael Novick, followed by Lisa Simpson, Ted Hayes, and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
2 minutes. Put it back to 2 minutes. I need to walk up.
I will restart it, sir. Thank you.
The only important word in that entire 2 hours was the word tactical, because all of that doesn't count, because your job is to deal with the policy, the strategy, and the mission of the police department. If the mission of the police department is to protect and serve private property, white supremacy, and capitalism, and the strategy of the police department is counterinsurgency policing and the use of so-called community policing as the domestic equivalent of psychological operations in the military, then all this tactics is lipstick on a pig. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the role of the police in this society, and what kind of training is necessary to fulfill a proper role for police in this society? If they did not say a word about racism, oppression, homelessness, poverty, then what they're doing is called inequality of life policing. You're reinforcing and maintaining the inequalities that beat people down. And your job as representatives of the civic society, I will not use the word civilian because I don't recognize them as a paramilitary force that has any authority or responsibility. Your job is to define a mission that's appropriate for a free society of people who are not treated with oppression and disrespect and racism and brutality. I'll just say about the question of training. I taught ESL for many years. I did a lesson with my students once about asking for a ride to the airport, and as soon as the lesson was over, one student came up to the other and said, "You, me, airport, go." Because training is not the factor. The factor is what do people do in the real world. If you want real-world efficacy in this training, two things. Everyone, you should have undercover officers, IAD officers out in the field so that when a cop goes up to somebody, he doesn't know if he's dealing with some a-hole or a person with mental health problems or someone who has their job on the line because they're testing them to see how they react. Second thing is every cop in L.A. should be required every year incognito encounter with the police in which they're arrested and jailed and see what it feels like. And all of you, once a year, should have the students from the Youth Justice Coalition come and sit in these seats, and you sit down there and see what it feels like.
I am Richard Risher. The problem I'm having is with your de-escalation. De-escalation refers to behavior that's intended to escape. I feel like all y'all need to be de-escalated because y'all all have escaped from telling me who killed my son. Y'all all have escaped from telling me when I'm going to get this real autopsy report, police report, death certificate. Ms. McClain, I noticed that the last time I was here, you tried to use my words for your words. But I'm here to check you today, sister. Because whatever I say once, Trust me, I can say twice. I said if when I was here the last time. So if was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. There ain't no alcohol up in here. But you're talking about escalation, my brother. And my son is dead. Can you tell me about your de-escalation on that situation when I'm not getting no questions or no answers to everything that I'm asking y'all? You sit up here and you show us a 2-hour film and take up my time, and Matt Johnson, you have the nerves to snicker over there. See, I know about you too, brother. See, you an entertainment lawyer, so this is entertainment to you. But this ain't no goddamn entertainment to me, because my son is dead. You feel what I'm saying? See, y'all play a lot of games. I did a lot of research on all y'all. You feel me? See, I'm learning something about all y'all up in here. Every last one of y'all play all these little bullshit-ass games with people, and y'all sit there and laugh and pity-pat, and you want to ask these people 1,000 questions when you know since beginning of time, this bullshit-ass shit they putting on this film ain't never worked. None of they taxes they talk about has never worked. Get out of here with the bullshit and keep it real with your peoples. That shit y'all talking does not work. Because if it was de-escalation to mean to escape from a situation, my son was running. Why your officers didn't escape from that situation? Guess why? Because they roll cops. Their jobs is to assassinate our people, not to back up and escape from the situation, run to the situation. That's what I'm talking about. Y'all want to sit up here and talk this bullshit? Don't talk this bullshit to me when I'm in y'all commission boards. Y'all tell me the real, because none of y'all still haven't told me shit. It's been 3 months. I still don't know who the officer is that killed my son, but y'all tell me some bullshit-ass lies about it's public records. What public records is it? Because it ain't in mine. I done looked everywhere. And I still can't, Matt Johnson, don't say nothing, please. Because you're an entertainment lawyer, and I'm not here.
Thank you for your
You
comments.
can sign the contract, okay?
Chief, well, we have released the name of the officers involved in that shooting, right? I mean, we
haven't released it. You
must have.
And you keep lying. Why do y'all keep lying? And then y'all have the audacity to say, y'all don't like the words that come out my mouth? Y'all appointed me for this position.
Yes.
I didn't ask
As I recall, yes, we
I
have.
told y'all when I first came here.
Do we have a family liaison officer here?
So what you gonna do about it? Family liaisons don't do shit. What you gonna do about it? You keep talking about this training. The training is killing our people. Do you understand that, my brother? Do you understand that? Because you're working with this doctor that don't have a clue about our communities. She can't even speak right. She fumbling her words because guess what? It's bullshit. See, I'm a real one. Come at me with some real shit, and I will believe it. But when y'all keep coming at me with this dumbass bullshit that y'all got these people trying to say, oh, the community, y'all lost touch of the community
Ma'am,
years ago.
thank you for coming down.
Y'all lost touch of the community years ago.
Ma'am, we need to continue with the meeting.
We can police our own communities.
We need to continue with the meeting.
You entertain a lawyer? You want me to dance for you? Because that's what you like. Yeah, but you don't want to hear the truth.
Ma'am, can you please have a seat?
Get some answers, though. Can you answer that question, Matt Johnson?
I think a number of your questions have been answered.
When? Where they at? Because I ain't got no phone calls. Where they at?
I'm
You
happy
sit
to
here
have
and
an
lie to these people all the
happy to
time.
have an officer
You
speak
need to go
you
find you a rapper or
after the
something, because you in the wrong professional. Stupid ass bitch.
Thank you. The next speaker, Ted Hayes.
De-escalation happened before your very eyes. This mother of a deceased use of force victim refused to leave, refused to be quiet. Officers came to remove her, and members of the public came and surrounded her. Then more officers surrounded them. There were 20 people in this aisle, 6 feet wide. And Commissioner Cynthia McLean Hill, not knowing who they were, they're not knowing who she was, she came down here and she just de-escalated the entire situation. As a result of that, the Police Protective League said the commission wants police officers to run from criminals. And they have a scathing negative letter or communication against Commissioner McLean Hill and Commissioner Matthew Johnson. They're not on the same page, but they're speaking to the choir, meaning police officers. So until you get an opportunity to get together with the Police Protective League about this de-escalation, we're going to have turmoil within the ranks. Because they believe it's not efficient. It means running from criminals. Come on. So that incident should be a training video. It really should be. Many of the members of the press were here. They videoed it. You should request they turn that tape information over to you so they get a real idea of what de-escalation means. Of course, the commissioner had no idea what might happen. She was at risk coming to that crowd. And officers are going to be at risk when they de-escalate. There's no question about that. But they're not going to be running from criminals.
Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by Lisa Renee, Zach Siegel, Robert Sucher, and Jyoti Chand.
Yes, I'm Yvonne Michelle Autry. I want to say I'm so sorry about your son. And I think we need more time. We listened to 2 hours, well taken. What I also would like to say is that until we can successfully police and govern ourselves, because we do still have black on black crime. I don't want to just keep saying that. But you know, Black Lives Matter still when brothers have been manipulated by the system to exterminate each other. Okay? Black Lives Matter when, you know, women and children are being murdered because of rival gangs that are being manipulated to further their agenda, which is the extermination of black people. Okay? So I have been raped, mugged, and I have, mugged and robbed by black men. Okay? They're upset because they're profiled. They're upset, but still, it happened. So until we can stop that, we need police officers that will serve and protect. Please don't do that while I'm talking. Well, you know, you need to wait. So until we can prevent black on black and other violence in our communities, we need police officers that will
Stop the clock. Stop the clock. Stop the clock. Ma'am.
Black people, women, poor people.
Hold on. I've paused the clock for you.
Okay, thank you.
paused the
I
clock
have
for you.
seen on the news.
I want to talk to the audience for a minute.
I'm sorry?
I want to talk to the audience for a minute because they're being. Everyone has their opportunity to submit a card and speak. If you have to clear your throat, then you should leave the room. If you continue to clear your throat where you're obviously not serious, you're just trying to disrupt the woman from having her 2 minutes, I will ask you to leave. So the woman in the back with the hat, I think you either need to leave the room to clear your throat, or if you continue, then you need to leave the room. Or if you're okay, then we'll continue. Okay, start the clock and please continue.
Can I have a retro 5 minutes?
No.
Well, you know, I'm not interrupting you, so let me finish. Well, what I was okay, you're a real one, I am too, okay? Okay, thank you. What I was about to say is that I have seen coverage of non-black people that have been taken into custody, but when I see black people that are not given an opportunity, they're handcuffed, they're murdered, and then murdered after they're handcuffed and still incriminated, that's an obvious extermination of black people. So this is why we are here. Okay, until we can, like I said, prevent all criminal predator mentality in our community, this is why we are here, so that we can communicate with you. We need more time. You're obviously not responding. Okay, so we're trying to be benevolent in this because I know you're trying to provoke a race war. All right, right, this is what I believe, so you can have a reason to exterminate then more black people. Okay, so now you're not coughing, huh? You're rude and you're wrong.
Leah Renee. Leah Renee, followed by Zach Siegel.
Okay, can we have order, please? Can we have order, please? Ma'am, please.
Hi. Hi,
Okay, Hold the clock, please. Ma'am. Ma'am. Ma'am.
You give me 2 minutes? Great, thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it because I'd like to file a complaint too. I want you to know that I've tried for 4 years to file a complaint about criminal activity in my neighborhood, and I can't file one. I came here about a month ago, and I brought it to your attention, and I was passed off. I asked him to write me an email because I didn't need any more telephone conversations. I want it in writing. I can't even file a complaint in writing.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but this report is on the de-escalation.
No, actually, I read it, and isn't it about, let's see, you talked about, you had a problem with money. You talked about constitutional policing. You talked about mental health. You talked about public trust, process, fair and impartial policing. And above all of us, it reads reverence for the law. And I'm denied due process. I'm denied public trust. I'm denied fair and impartial policing. And I'm denied a constitutional right to file a complaint. So if your inspector general doesn't take care of, you know, I'm peach with brown spots because I don't like to say I'm white. But if you want to say it, I'm white. And I can't file a complaint. And I came here a month and a half ago.
Mr. Bustamante, can you please make sure she has a
complaint? So let me file my complaint today. I just want, really quick, so everybody knows, you have a tremendous white-collar crime transpiring on the west side of Los Angeles. It is unchecked and unprosecuted. There's been no other time in the period of City of Los Angeles that it is so bad and it's so outrageous. And you know what it is? You deprive people public services because you call a wall a house. And so you deprive all the people in the audience, including me, sanitary sewers, education, your retirement fund for all the public officers in here. Because you call
Ma'am, you're
a
far
wall
off.
a house.
You're
Oh,
far
no,
off
I'm
the
not
topic
actually.
of this
Okay,
report.
well, all right.
This
you
would
can
be
say
this would be
that.
much more appropriate for general comment.
Well, thank you. I will show up in public comment then.
Zach Siegel.
I just wanted to mention a couple of the points from the presentation that I had an issue with. It was mentioned that there's this new management that follows cadets even after they come out of training. They come back after 11 months. There's also, they get 8 hours over the 24-hour minimum for mental health training. There are 188 hours of de-escalation training for every LAPD cadet. And you're making these site visits to Dallas and San Diego and Las Vegas to learn about de-escalation. But how much does all this stuff cost? I want to know. An analogy was made to academia, where the number of administrators has more than doubled in the past 25 years, and the tuition, after accounting for inflation, has increased by over 18 times, which is huge. And it's less clear how much LAPD costs the public because their funding goes through so many channels. But we do know that they get more than half of the city's funding, the city's local taxes that they can spend however they want. It goes to LAPD. So I just want to know how many people could have been housed for all that huge amount of money that goes into all these programs for de-escalation. How much safety would that have created? There's also a lot of cheaper stuff than housing, although housing estimates are usually pretty inflated because they're benchmarked at like the cost of building luxury lofts, which is not really necessary. But like, it's even cheaper to make other safety forming things like community gardens, art supplies, sports teams, school supplies, urban farms. That stuff is all really cheap. And everything that you said sounds extremely, extremely expensive. You also really flopped on the question about how do we know how effective all this soft skill training is. You didn't have any answer to that, so it's just a big waste of money. So you're all just wasting money. And
Robert.
even being here right now, you're wasting a ton of money. I don't know how much.
Robert Sutcher.
My name is Robert Suker, and I am a retired teacher with LAUSD. I am a member of White People for Black Lives. And I just want to look at a question that Ms. McLean Hill, do I have that right, or is it, yes, made, which is, what officers do you want in the field? You know, I really appreciate that there is a change, it seems. There is, the word de-escalation now kind of exists as part of the curriculum, so to speak. And this, I think, really is a credit to the work that's going on nationwide on the parts of people who are risking their lives, standing up in communities, facing military-grade enforcement. And this is what is most schizophrenic about this whole process. I think, you know, Lewis Carroll was born too early. You know, Alice in Wonderland is here, and everybody knows it. We all know that the whole country bristles with arms, and you are peace officers or law enforcement officers. When we have, for example, if I spit the wrong place near the metro line, they're going to slap me with a $280 fine. Well, that's really sweet if I work downtown and wear very nice suits, but if I don't have a friggin' job, then how do I pay that, and what are the consequences of my not paying it? How can we talk about de-escalation? How can we, as peace officers or even law enforcement officers, keep doing our jobs day after day and not begin, as you are beginning to do? And I want to not just completely sound critical, because there is some of the surface of the ice is starting to melt. And I'm so grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Joe T. Chand.
My name is Jyoti Chand, and I'm a member of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I'm actually holding a photo of Chief Charlie Beck. He is wanted for murder. Do you see this man? And each of you have blood on your hands. You are each guilty for the blood of Black and brown and indigenous children, of our mothers, our aunts, our uncles, our daughters. Each of you should be really ashamed. Actually, you should be in panic. You should be tried for war crimes. You have declared war on us. Today we come out here with you week after week after week, and you put on a horse, pony, and a pig show. And you throw out these terms. We're about public safety. Today we're talking about de-escalation. Today it's to protect and to serve. But we know that you are flat out lying. You've been lying. And we know that LAPD is not in the business of de-escalating. LAPD is the most murderous police department in the world. All of your fucking photos, I don't know if you can see the photos that you have up here when all of you are doing that bullshit presentation. All of those photos are about cops escalating. We see Black and brown men on the floor. We see women on the floor. We see you in our schools. We see you in our communities. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. If you go actually on your website, I scrolled down your website and I looked at what weapons you all have. LAPD has 21 different types of shotguns and rifles. They have 36 different types of guns. They have semi-automatic rifles. They have each officer is equipped with at least 10,000 guns. They have 4 different boats. They have bomb squads. Urban Area Security Initiatives provides military funding for you all, $20 million for 2016. Stop lying. You're not in the business of de-escalating. You're in the business of murdering. And this man is wanted for murder. Each of you are war criminals. You're at war with us.
We have no other comment cards on this item. We're now on item number 3, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Moore.
No, there's no
actions on this?
What's that? Okay, so hold on. Thank you very much for the report. Greatly appreciate all the energy and hard work that went into it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Ma'am, you're disrupting the meeting. Please have a seat. Ma'am, please have a seat. Ma'am, if you don't have a seat, I'm going to ask you to leave. Okay, ma'am, I'm now asking you to leave. Ma'am, you need to leave.
This man is wanted. He's wanted.
Ma'am, are you collecting your stuff? Because you need to leave.
Everybody see this? He's wanted. He has committed crimes against humanity. The UN actually has already come out with how the police in this country is responsible for the murder of black people.
Ma'am, if you don't leave, I will be forced to clear the room.
All should be ashamed. You have blood in your hands. And this man is wanted. He's wanted. He's wanted. That's what we're talking about.
Ma'am, you need to leave the meeting.
Fuck you. I have to leave, and actually, I do have to leave because I have to go now work at a shelter. You should really be ashamed while you all are getting paid, talking about people in trauma, domestic violence survivors. You all are fucking full of shit. Fuck all of you. Yeah, fuck you. Fuck all of you. Fuck each and every one of you. Fuck all of you.
Chief?
Commissioner, on behalf of Chief Beck, has been earlier reported who experienced an accident off duty.
Are you making threats, sir?
Commissioner, as
Please
was
have a
indicated in my earlier remarks, I just began. Chief Beck's unable to be here. He did suffer an accident while off duty on his motorcycle, and so he's not here today. But I am reporting on his behalf and the men and women of the Los Angeles Police Department that for significant events and activities this past week, first and foremost, we want to identify a successful Halloween evening in the Hollywood area, as well as in concert with working with our partners with the Sheriff's Department in West Hollywood, where well over 500,000 people gathered and celebrated what, as it turns out, is a very festive event, a very celebrated holiday in our culture. So I'm proud of the men and women that were out there in their work in facilitating the public safety, the gathering. We did have about 40 arrests. That is a little different than what the West Hollywood area saw, so I'm disappointed in that those arrests were made for each one for alcohol and the abuse of it and being drunk in public. So I'm hopeful that as we get ready for our next year, that we can continue to work with our communities, including the licensed ABC establishments in the Hollywood area, to improve on that stat. Because at the end of the day, everyone who came to Hollywood last night deserved an evening of celebration and of joy, and I think that the only dark spot on that was the instances in which we were caused to make those arrests. The other thing I'm troubled by is in this last week, I reported in my remarks last week that we had lost ground on regards to shooting violence, in regards to homicides. This past week we've not seen an improvement in that area. And I'm troubled to say that included last night the murder of a 3-year-old girl by an individual at a manufacturing or a business here in the Newton area. And while that suspect later turned himself in, and there may or may not be issues of mental health, we have seen a troubling trend in the instances of infant individuals being stabbed and murdered by people either known to them or people in their work area around where they're frequenting. And I think it points out the need for the continued resources of mental health, of resources that can provide shelter, support, and assistance to people who are experiencing mental illness and are challenged. And I would just encourage to all the public that individuals that are displaying dangerous behaviors or are impacted with mental health issues to be mindful that they're not only can pose a danger to themselves and be gravely disabled, but they can also pose a significant risk and danger to others, including our young ones. So that is I just think I wanted to bring attention to that, just that we're all, including the officers and the firefighters that responded last night, impacted by those type of losses.
This is the second young child in the past month that was murdered.
So I want to move in a broader context as to overall violent crime. With October, the instances of gun violence, we have lost our ground in regards to the reduction of homicides. Today, we're at 251 homicides versus 243 last year. Our overall violent crime, it is our 16th week where violent crime has been reduced to 10.6%, but it's kind of plateaued there. For the last 3 weeks, we're right at that number. And it is, in looking at the underlying influences, is that the influences are twofold. One, gun violence, and the second one, we've seen an increase in some of our street robberies. The department is working with the existing strategies that have already been discussed with this commission. We're seeing success with our officers. For instance, on the west side, there was a series of street robberies numbering nearly 20, in which officers and their proactive work and piecing a case together were able to identify the suspects and have removed them from the street, and we're prosecuting those individuals. But there are a number of other similar type of street robberies occurring. Some of them do result in gun violence. We had a murder this last week that stemmed from a street robbery that accelerated into a shooting. So I think the point of bringing this up is that while the department is looking at our statistics and we drive each week a discussion of them, what is behind them is actual people. And we never lose sight of that, and we would look to continue to work with the public as we approach the holiday season, that they be mindful of their surroundings in the public, in public places, that they be well-lit areas, that they be accompanied by others, that they, if they are accosted, that they not resist, that they be a perfect witness, and that they work with us, the police department, in identifying individuals that may be involved in this type of criminal actions, so that we can take action and remove them from the street and improve our overall safety. The other areas I'd like to talk about is just briefly our categorical uses of force. We did not have an officer-involved shooting this last week, but we do. So we're at a total of 23, as reported last week. As reported last week, we're at 23 officer-involved shootings with hits. Compared to last year, at this time, it was 34. That is a 25%. I'm sorry, that is a 32% reduction. Looking at our 4-year average, we are about just under 11% under where we were, and that is only 2 fewer shootings. But again, in questioning where we're going with our training and developing our strategies to stress not just the importance of officers and the public, but our efforts to de-escalate and find alternatives to taking people into custody and doing so in a manner that is cognizant of the safety of everyone. We look to these type of numbers. Ultimately, now, in reality, the millions of contacts that we have, these are already small numbers, but we believe that the training and much was discussed today is efforted to improve this further. Moving to the traffic collisions, hit and runs involving serious injuries or deaths continues to be a challenge for us. We're 20% higher this year than last for hit and runs involving serious injuries or death. Motor vehicles versus PED, we're at 14% of an increase. That's 381 people have either had a serious injury or death as a result of a pedestrian being struck by a motor vehicle. And lastly, the only bright spot, if you will, on our traffic collisions right now is involving bicyclists. In bicyclists, we've for serious injuries or deaths, we've had a 13.5% reduction. So this year, some 90 people, however, have been seriously injured or killed as a result of a bicyclist-involved collision. What each of these stats demonstrate, again, they're much more than stats, they're individuals, and public safety for traffic is also an important element for the department, and it is also one that we need better help and support of the people who are in the streets. The people who are traveling, whether it be pedestrians, bicyclists, or motorists, Many of these accidents are entirely, while accidental, are also avoidable. If people as people follow the rules of the road and are mindful of their responsibilities to act responsibly. So this is not just an enforcement effort. This is not something the department can enforce its way out of. And then I would like to say it is something, while engineering efforts can improve traffic safety, ultimately we need the partnership and participation of all of our communities. Relative to our sworn and civilian personnel strength, today we're at 9,853 sworn personnel on payroll. That's 147 personnel below our 10,000 authorized strength. We have 2,741 civilian personnel. That's 536. That's 536 vacancies of our professional and managerial class civilians. For reserves, we have 422 police reserves with 284 specialists, volunteers, and 58 chaplains. Today, our number for cadets total 7,861. And, Mr. President, that concludes my remarks on behalf of Chief Black.
Thank you. Any questions from my fellow commissioners? Can you call public comment? How many cards do we have?
We have 10 cards. The first 5 speakers: Prentice Jenkins, Beth Kemp, Lisa Simpson, Paula Miner, and Lisa Hines.
Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter, publisher since 1996.
Hello, Mr. Jenkins.
Publisher of City Life newsletter. Hello, President Johnson, Vice President Soberoff, Commission. I'd also like to say, tell the chief I'm pulling for him. I'm glad he's not hurt. A 63-year-old man riding motocross. I mean, I was put to shame. I got winded going to the restroom the other day. 63. I'm telling him I'm impressed, really impressed. I've always been like this, dear. I've been. Well, yeah. It's not the first time I've been called an Uncle Tom. I've been called it, and I called people Uncle Toms before. So, I deserve it all. But yeah. Also, there's a.
No,
all right,
ma'am, you need to leave. You've had multiple warnings.
Please,
I warned you earlier. You need to leave. You need to leave, Jasmine.
So,
But so's yours.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's why I shaved mine. You can't see mine anymore. Yeah. So I'd like the chief to get back to work. He's got a lot of work to do. He's still got those 2 cops that killed Ezell Ford that he's got to deal with, Wampler and Villegas. They're not going anywhere. Ezell Ford still has a voice here. So he still has to handle that. Also, I just want to reiterate, thank you for the de-escalation on that situation yesterday. That's a credit to the board. It really is. Credit to the commission. Credit to the chief. If we can have them all like that, textbook, put him in handcuffs and deliver him to the justice system, right? That's a textbook. De-escalation, and that's what we need. We need de-escalation with the police department. We need de-escalation with the community, and that's who we are. The community's here talking about de-escalation. It's not just the police that have to talk about it. The community has to talk about it too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Simpson.
Michael Moore. I mean, every time it's time for the report, y'all always giving percentages. Like, what does that shit really mean? That percentage don't mean nothing to me when my son did. You keep talking about, we had 11% last year, we was hired this year. No, tell the truth. Quit sitting up here with these goddamn statistics lying in our face. Ain't shit changing. Ain't shit got better. Tell the truth. Y'all still killing us. What? Oh, this week because y'all didn't kill nobody, y'all want a cookie? No, it's not going to happen. Because y'all going to kill somebody before this weekend is up? Because that's y'all job. Y'all sit up here and play these games with people, and I'm really tired of y'all games. And Matt, you going to sit there and lie and say, you got everything I need. You ain't got everything I need because I ain't got a conviction yet. I ain't got a prosecution yet. And the same officer that killed my son is probably still on the streets preying on somebody else's kid. So don't never sit up here and tell me you gave me everything I wanted because you ain't never gave me shit but a whole bunch of lip boxing because that's all you do. It's sad how all y'all sit there and tell the bald-faced lies that y'all tell, and y'all expect somebody to get up here and smile and grin in y'all face and be y'all friend. I don't understand it. It's just not human-like to me. Because if I bite you, you going to bite me back. You feel me? So I feel like y'all bite me. Y'all took a big plug out of me, so now it's time for me to bite y'all back. But I'm going to leave y'all with these words right here of a very strategic, loyal, respectable black man. His name is Fred Hampton Sr. You know what he told me? He said, you don't fight fire with fire. You fight fire with water. We ain't gonna fight, we're gonna fight racism with solidarity. We're gonna fight capitalism with socialism. Socialism is the people. And if you're afraid of socialism, Matt Johnson, you're afraid of yourself. That part. And then you put your head down and diddle on your phone like you don't hear nothing that's coming out my mouth. I'm tired of you playing these games you playing. Won't you just go on and quit? Because you ain't doing the community no damn good. You just sitting up there, you on your phone, you're so disrespectful. You want all the respect, but you don't give no respect. So when am I going to know who killed my son since you was fat-mouthing 5 minutes ago?
Those names were released
When?
on September 14th.
You a goddamn lie. You a lie. You a liar. You a liar. Just like how they wrote a report on me talk about I'm a terrorist, you are lying. Stop lying in my face.
Chief Moore or
Chief
Mr.
Moore's a liar.
Bustamante,
We've been knowing he was a
where can
liar.
Chief find that information?
Where can I
It's
find
been
that
public
information
since September
Chief Moore, 'cause
14th.
you a liar too.
The information was released online. We'll be happy to give another release of the press release
You a
that has
lie.
those names.
It was never
Ma'am,
released
ma'am,
online. Why you gonna
I'm
keep
sorry.
sitting here
I'm
lying
sorry
in my
for your
face?
loss.
Okay,
I'm sorry for
What's
your
his
loss.
name? What's his
I'm
name?
sorry
What's
for
their
your
name?
loss.
That part. See, that's what I'm saying. The shit you do and you approve of, you think it's cool. He can't even give you a valid answer.
If
He can't even give you a valid
you
answer.
stay here for an hour, I will have someone print the press release for you. I will have the press release printed for you if you want to wait.
Will you?
Yes,
You really? You
yes,
tell
I
me
will.
Fucking time I come here. Oh, just stay an hour. Then you have your little puppets come out there and tell me, oh, it's gonna be another 45 minutes. I don't have time to play Matt Johnson game no longer.
Can someone from the commission office,
Ms. Simpson.
can you print out the press release, please?
Have him print that shit out right now.
We will.
You the president. You shut up, you liar. Shut your lying ass up. That's all your ass do is lie. And then you want to sit up there and act like you a fucking assistant chief. You's assistant bitch. That's what you is.
Call the next speaker, please.
The next speaker, Paula Minor.
Back running up in your ass. Fucking faggot.
Paula Minor. Okay. Lisa Hines.
They ain't gave me shit. Get 'em, baby. That part.
Good morning, afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to know, y'all talking about de-escalation. Where does it start? Where does it supposed to take place? Is it out in the streets when they're interacting with the community, or does it apply when we're in this building? Does it apply when we're in this building? De-escalation? No answer?
No, because they don't know what to say.
Oh, because you know what? Okay, well, let me ask you this. Who's supposed to initiate the de-escalation when it's somebody, a visitor, a citizen, and an officer? Who's supposed to initiate the de-escalation if they're having a disagreement? The who?
The DA.
Okay.
The judge when you get
Well,
convicted,
I'm
you get
asking
off
this
the face.
because I came in, I was in line this morning. I've been coming with this picture for maybe 4 meetings now. And every time I get ready to come through, it's a different officer each time. He takes the picture and he look at it and he wait till I go through the machine, and then he hands it to me. Everything else I sit up there. This one officer this morning told me if I didn't put it on the thing, I couldn't come in. I told him, no, I'm coming in. I asked him, why are you the only one? Could you just look at it? Could you just take it and, it's glass. This is my baby picture that died in you guys' jail. And I don't know how, because you guys say she died of suicide, but I say she was killed by police. But he argued me up and down, telling me I couldn't come in. Well, I'm not getting in if I don't put it on the ramp. I just said, took a step back and said, call your sergeant. To de-escalate this, stop arguing, and let's see if somebody else can help me. Because I know it could be done. He told me he a different officer. He not the same. I know you're not, but I'm asking you.
Thank you for what you did in that moment.
Okay. But that's why I'm trying to see. Who's supposed to initiate the de-escalation? If it's the officer, if it's something small like that,
That's why we had an entire presentation on it today to make sure that these skills are being.
It applies when they're on the streets, or do it applies when we're in this building too?
It should apply. It should apply everywhere.
Because he has a badge, he was in the right. He couldn't have been wrong. I'm wrong because I'm just a citizen, normal citizen. And one more thing. I know I'm over time, but one more thing. She been waiting 3 months, Lisa Simpson. I've been waiting 7 months.
That part. Speak, sister.
My daughter been dead since March 27th of this year.
And y'all ain't gave her nothing.
I ain't heard from nobody.
Mr. Bustamante, at next week's meeting, can you give us an update about approximately when the circumstances surrounding this situation will come to us?
Recall Cynthia McClain Hill asked Chief Beck, who was the officers that killed my son, and I still don't know. So stop playing these games.
We're probably still a few months away from having the full report done, but Mr. Bustamante at the next meeting will report on an approximate time schedule. Ma'am.
I didn't hear you.
We're probably a few months away from the report being complete, but Mr. Bustamante at our next meeting will report on approximately when that report will be complete and will come before the police commission.
What's taking so long though?
Can you please, ma'am? Ma'am, can you please?
Quit calling me ma'am. You know my name. Say Lisa Simpson, please.
Miss Simpson, can you please?
Now I respect that.
Thank you.
Stop calling me ma'am. That's your
Where I grew up, my mom taught me to call people ma'am and sir.
Mama told you to turn your back on these officers killing my kids too, huh? Where you came from, that part. Shit.
So you probably how long away?
I think we are still several months away from having a final report, but Mr. Bustamante will give an approximate date at next week's meeting.
Her son was killed 3 months ago. My baby died 7 months ago.
For almost all of these instances, it takes almost a year to do a complete report.
Girl, you see them bring some paper when he told them to go look on the computer. You ain't seen them bring back nothing there because the computer broke. These motherfuckers is lying.
CJ Snell's birthday next month on the 25th.
Bustamante.
October 1st.
When the report come out, will the officer involved be mentioned?
Okay. Ms. Hines, we need to continue with the next speaker, please, but we'll have that information for you.
The next 3 speakers, please, the Red Chief Hunt, Trevor Gerard, and Michael Novick.
Okay. You guys, hey, let's be honest. The kids died at hands of another. LAPD is responsible. The only recourse that you guys really have is to sue them. And they really don't even understand that because
That part right there.
I don't want him to be able to bill officer. Because he didn't have the proper
Well, yeah, that's why. Okay, see, and Matt, Matt, here's the bad thing. Wait, Miss Hines. Okay, wait. Let me explain it. Let me explain it. I was over there where your daughter was at Metropolitan too, and I know that the detaining officers and the people that goes to check, they capriciously abuse my discretion. They took them 10 hours to take me to the hospital, and my foot was bleeding. And this is no bullshit. I went there at 10 o'clock and didn't get to the hospital till 10 o'clock that night. And the first thing that any officer ever does is take me to the hospital when they detain me because of my health problems. I know that this has been a problem over at Metropolitan, and I know that her daughter died at hands of another. Whose hands, we don't know. But yet you guys got to come back and tell her, because you guys supposed to have cameras in that facility. And this is a sad thing that anybody of color, because if it was your child, you feel just like that. And if it was my child, I'd be putting my foot in your ass. And that's just what it would be, because my foot wouldn't be coming out your ass until it happened. But Matt, you need to speed up the you need to speed up the investigation. Bustamante, you need to speed up the investigation. There is no reason this should happen. There is no reason for any kids to come up dead, especially talking about de-escalation in custody. Nobody's never supposed to come up dead in custody. Thank you. The Red Chief Hunt.
Trevor Gerard, please.
Ma'am, can you give Mr. Rod his time to speak?
You good. You know, because you always trying to cut somebody off, but that's really sad. And you don't say nothing to your officers, though, because I already know you have no control or no power. You just sitting there like a little prom, like a sitting duck in a motherfucking pool of fish. That's it.
Ms. Simpson, can you please have a seat so we can continue?
Stand up, we can talk. I ain't bothering nobody. Go ahead, Trevor.
So the word is that Charlie Beck met with an accident. And as you can recall, I warned him that men fall down steps, men have heart attacks, men have strokes. So see, at some point, the universe will deal with him, and he was broken from the inside. Matt Johnson has 4 children, one of whom, I understand, is a boy. God forbid, Matt Johnson, that you ever have to suffer at the hands of the violence of men like Charlie Beck. God forbid that you ever have to grieve like Miss Simpson and Miss Hines here have to grieve because of the violence of men like Charlie Beck. God forbid you have to sit in this audience and suffer because your boy was just another nigger in the crosshairs. When we are silent in the face of injustice, we have chosen the side of the oppressor. You have not only chosen the side of men like Charlie Beck and Eric Garcetti, you have chosen to be their errand boy. So run, boy, and tell your masters, the city is ours now.
Thank you, Michael Novick, Yvonne Michelle Autry, and Ted Hayes.
always starts at less than 2. I don't know why that is.
I will restart it when you begin, sir.
Yeah, I want to wish Chief Beck a speedy recovery and an early retirement. My son was killed in a motorcycle accident, so I know that it's can be very serious, and it's why I feel for some of the mothers here. But I do think that you might want to have Chief Beck examine himself, and you might want to examine what was at play, what's eating at him that led him to such risky, self-destructive behavior that he might have killed himself. Because I think internally he's recognizing that he has blood on his hands and he's punishing himself. And I think that that's because you've abdicated your responsibility to hold him accountable for the crimes of this department and the crimes that he's allowed to take place under his watch. And so I think you need to examine yourselves again. I want to ask a serious question. What's happened to the idea of a public meeting outside these premises to look at the question of racial profiling that Commissioner McLean-Hill proposed? Is that actually happening next week? And if so, where? And if not, when? You've demonstrated actually just recently in these last few exchanges that you're capable of de-escalating yourselves and containing yourselves and not issuing warnings after warnings to people and kicking them out of these meetings. And it didn't disrupt anything. People had their say. Nobody was upset. Nobody was injured. People talked and spoke their heart. And take that as a lesson that any one of these people who speak out is because they're suffering from trauma. And coming here is traumatic for anybody who comes into this room. The next meeting you have, I think you should start out with some of the Tongva people to smudge this place so you can have a meeting without the grim realities of all these people surrounding you with their guns and threatening you when you walk in the door. And I'll leave it at that.
Just in response to your question regarding the public meeting outside of the building, it was, as you may recall, initially called for November 1st. We had some logistical issues within the city in terms of getting a room. We were able to secure a room for next Tuesday, which we determined was not ideal because it's election day. We're not on the ballot. The next available meeting date for which we could secure a room over in City Hall in the Public Works meeting room is November 15th. So the meeting will be scheduled and held on November 15th in the Public Works meeting room. It's our regular commission meeting. So it'll be our regular meeting. It'll start at 9.
Somebody to get it with the technology today, they should be able to push a button. And
You will have it as soon as the meeting is over.
He has the information. It was released.
You'll have it right as soon as the meeting is over.
So in any event, in response to your question, so it'll be on the 15th, and it will be publicized, and it'll be a normal commission meeting. So we've managed to avoid Election Day and to get out of the room. No, it will be a single hearing meeting, so the entire meeting will be devoted to bias policing and racial profiling. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Call the next speaker, please.
Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by Ted Hayes.
Yes, I'm Yvonne Michelle Autry. I'm so sorry for the injury suffered by Chief Beck, but that is true. That is what is karmic. Okay, everything will come back to all of us. And thank you for intervening on my behalf, but I still think you should have a conscience because they're using you, and I think you know that by now. What I'd like, you don't need to be up in the house like that. You can make money helping the community. What I see as criminals in the street is criminals in the department. Personally, I want to eliminate both, okay? Don't cough. All right, the issue is we are here to expose the police officers that are permitting, I really don't appreciate that. I really don't. That's rude, and it's disrespectful, and I'm older than you. So can you hold yourself?
She's not even talking to you. Exactly.
Okay, well, whoever, please. So, okay.
The only person that is entitled to speak is the person at the podium.
but someone's laughing. I don't laugh while
Understood.
you
Let's
speak.
have order
I don't
and
laugh while you
let her
speak.
have her time complete. Ma'am,
But it's
ma'am.
Won't you tell her, ma'am? Shit.
Okay, thank you. The issue is, I'm quiet when you all speak. Can you give me that respect? Even if you don't agree with me? So, okay. Just give me that respect if you can find it in you. So what I'm saying is that we're here to identify the police that harass, rape, torture, experiment, and murder our people. Okay, I have been a victim of that. You cover up the sacrificial rituals. 2 weeks ago, an officer offered to show me his power drill. Yes, Officer Terrace. So, another officer tried to discourage me from filing a complaint, regarding the sacrificial ritual, rapes, and tortures of black women. The Grim Reaper was one. There are many. Okay, and I believe the police officers and black ops, special ops, y'all got to have your ritual. We don't need the servicing. So you're covering it up, obviously, because you're not releasing the information that would incriminate or it would expose the police officers that have murdered the two, her son and then her daughter. Okay, and many. So, I'm here to expose this. I'm alive. Okay, I got out the box. So, what I'm saying is we're not going to cover this up and keep incriminating the whistleblowers, the survivors, and the families of the survivors. I'm a survivor. And to what extent that you're working on my building, I believe the police are working with the maintenance men. They coming in sexually harassing me, going through my underwear. I call the police. He offers to show me his power drill.
Ma'am, thank you for your
comments. They want to cover that up. And, I filed more than 2 or 3 complaints on other officers.
Ma'am, thank you for
and
your
And
comments.
they all come back unfounded.
The next speaker
Okay,
is Ted Hayes.
Call the next speaker, please.
On the reports for the Grim Reaper, it said no human
Mr.
involved.
Hayes?
I'm a human being.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Now you need
Okay,
to.
her daughter is a human being.
Yes.
Her son
Ma'am,
is a human
please
being.
have a seat. Your time is up. We need to get to the next speaker.
So you need to release the information so that we can
will have
incriminate
it by the end of
the
the
rogue
day.
police officers, separate them, and
please.
prosecute them.
Ma'am,
from
if
the
you don't
police
have a seat, I'm
officers
going to
that
have to
are
ask you to
trying
leave.
to serve and protect.
If you don't
that
have
is
a
why
seat-
we're here.
Thank you.
That's one reason I'm here.
It's really curious as to how the SMART teams interact at a crime scene. Non-sworn personnel cannot really take over a crime scene and interact with anyone without police officer permission. So what we need to have is a full disclosure as to what the participation between the SMART team, the professional psychologists have when they arrive at a scene. First of all, how they arrive. They don't have red lights and sirens, come in their own cars. Are they dispatched throughout the city like police divisions are? Doubt that. But more importantly, what are we to believe that a professional who knows how to deal with a deranged person is going to be able to have any kind of jurisdiction over what happens out there? That doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't sound logical to me. We understand that people who have press passes can go beyond the yellow tape, but can these people go beyond the yellow tape? How are they identified, and what authority do they have? That needs to be discussed. That needs to be agendized. We need to hear from them as well as the department as to just how this is going to be conducted. Because I think it's smoke and mirrors when you say, oh, well, people who are mentally deranged, people disturbed. We have mental health people come out and assist us. Yeah. In what fashion, what manner, what authority? That's what we need to know. Otherwise, stop talking about this. Because I'm going to believe they're just as restricted as I am. Lots of people say, oh, I know him, officer. Let me speak to him. No, ma'am, step back. It's dangerous. I'm the one who confronts danger and at-risk things, but not you. That's the police officer's responsibility and duty to protect the public, even if they have a career as a professional psychologist.
Mr. Hayes, we're always available to meet with you and talk about what the SMART teams do, and you have a number of misperceptions about how we operate. We're happy to inform you otherwise. If you just talk to Lieutenant Brian Bixler right back there, he'll give you all the details to help better inform you as to how we work with mental health.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no other comment cards on this item. We're now on item number 4, public comment period. We have 13 comment cards. I believe 4 These individuals are not present.
Okay.
The first four, Tamanisha Fitzpatrick, followed by Prentice Jenkins and Beth Kemp.
Okay. Him right here with the bald head in the back. The officer right there. What's his name? Barry Montgomery. Okay. He murdered my brother, Carnell Snell. That's my brother. They took a part of me at the end of the day. So if y'all shot my brother one time in the leg, why y'all keep shooting my brother if he was running and all that? Why did y'all shoot him, keep shooting him if y'all shot him in the leg? Why?
She asking you, killer?
Huh?
You answer that question?
Why? Why? And you black. And they still got you in this motherfucker. And you the one that killed my motherfucking brother. So why is you still on the force? You shot my brother in the leg and y'all kept shooting him. Y'all shot him like 17 motherfucking times. Y'all talking about y'all shot 6 times. Y'all shot him 7 times. So why are you still on the force and you killed my brother? I don't understand. What a car at? What a car he was in? What a car at that he was in? Huh? What a car at? Y'all supposed to contact the helicopters and shit if he was on a high-speed motherfucking chase, though. Y'all didn't know my brother had that gun until y'all wrote that motherfucking camera back to keep it 100. So y'all just murdered my brother. 18 years old. Why is he still on the force? Huh? Y'all killed my brother. Y'all took a part of me. I don't understand. Why is he still on the force? Huh? Mac, I don't even know you, but I hear a lot about you. They talk a lot of shit about you. What's up? Why he still right here? Why he still right here on the force and he killed my brother, Carnell Snell? I don't understand. Y'all go home to y'all kids all happy and shit. We got to wake up depressed and shit and all that, thinking about our sisters and brothers, daughters, and all that. Y'all don't understand how we feel, huh?
I'm very sorry for your loss.
But why is he still right here, though? He right here.
Sir,
I'm
young
a
man.
ma'am. I'm a young lady.
Apologies.
But I'm just saying, why is he still on the force?
You're directing your energy and your
It
anger
don't matter.
to the wrong person. Sergeant Montgomery.
I
has
don't give a
nothing to do
fuck. I don't care.
Just so you're clear, I want to make sure we're clear. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Prentice Jenkins, please.
Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter, publisher, activist since 1991. De-escalation is important, folks. Stop the clock for a second.
Ms. Simpson, can you please? If you stay until the end of the meeting, I'll have it for you. Okay, great. You'll have it outside. Ma'am, can Mr. Jenkins please have his time?
Y'all said my son was 28. Y'all said my son got shot on the ground. He got shot in the dirt. Y'all said my son got shot in the chest. They shot 50 shots. My son took 30 in the back. Y'all said my son was killed by another person. He was killed by your punk ass officers. You feel me? And then you wonder why I come here and got the attitude and the aggression I got, because you ain't telling me a motherfucking thing to make me happy. Nothing makes me happy. I take depression pills because I'm so fucking angry. I wish I could get my hands on one of y'all if y'all was like me and do some bodily harm to y'all. But I ain't gonna do y'all like that. You know why? Because that man up above, he gonna call all y'all names, homie. He gonna call all y'all names and y'all gonna be
Ms. Simpson, can we please continue to have Mr. Jenkins have his time?
He gonna take something so precious away from you, Mr. Johnson. You gonna mail in your motherfucking drawers. Cause you're not really black, homie. You just got our pigmentation of our skin, but you just like the rest of these white supremacy motherfuckers. You privileged, and you ain't helping your people with your privileged ass. You ain't privileged ass, Cynthia McClain Hill. When y'all gonna get these white men's dick out y'all mouth and do something for y'all motherfucking peoples? That part. You can say whatever you want to say about me. You know what I gotta say to that? Don't care! What? Y'all know your faggot ass ain't saying nothing because you've been taking dick since you've been on the court. Oh, fucking bitch.
Okay.
I don't know how you follow that.
It's called democracy, President Johnson. It's not always pretty, but like Winston Churchill said.
Are you sure it was Winston Churchill?
Yeah, I'm sure it's one. Or someone said, "Hey, what do you think about democracy?" Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst we've ever had until you consider all the other ones we tried. Okay, so de-escalation is very important, folks. And de-escalation also means that we have to compromise with the community. De-escalation means to de-escalate what happened here. These mothers need, Ms. Hines and Ms. Simpson, they need answers for what happened to their children. Just think of me as the Geneva Convention, or I'm Switzerland. Somebody's got to stretch out between the community and the police. And that's very important, folks. So de-escalation also means if you want this to de-escalate, they actually need answers. They don't have the answers. The answers are over here with the police department. And only the board can get the answers from the police department. These Ms. Hines and Ms. Simpson can't get the answers from the police department. Only the board can do that. And President Johnson, you said it'd be about a month or two before she could get answers?
Each of these investigations takes almost a year, and once the report is done and it goes through the process, it comes to us, we evaluate it, we publish those facts. We are more transparent in that regard than, there's no other department that's more transparent than us in that regard. The chief's report, the inspector general's report, obviously our findings are all public.
Right. Okay, fantastic. So I'm looking forward to the findings. There's a quote that says, "Lies are accepted while the truth is dissected."
Who said that one?
I just wrote that 10 minutes ago. So all we want, like Malcolm X said, I don't care whether truth, whoever gets, I'm for the truth, whoever gets it. I Googled it. Malcolm X did say that.
Okay, the next three speakers, Lisa Simpson, not present. Paula Miner, not present. The Red Chief Hunt, not present. Jordan Phillips, followed by Trevor Gerard.
Bustamante, Moore, Tafunk, McLean Hill, Soberoff, Johnson, Goldsmith, your last name, and Silva. And everyone here, may you all bear witness. May you all bear witness to what I'm about to say. What's on your city hall, he who violates his oath profanes the divinity of faith itself. You etched those into your walls to remind you, I guess, of something. He that violates his oath profanes the divinity of faith itself. You have these things on your walls: respect the people, reverence for law, integrity in all we say and do. And I ask you, in this time of shifting energy, as the planets are moving, as our nation is moving towards something much greater than our beginnings, the beginnings of slavery and taking land which isn't ours, the beginnings of pain, the beginnings of sadness and grief. We are moving out of that, and we are feeling the pain of our growth. We are transforming. And I ask you, I challenge you right now in this time of transformation to take care of yourself. This environment is not conducive for growth and positive energy. It's just not. I was camping outside of this at City Hall for about 23 days and saw bagels and donuts being shipped in. I want you to fill your body with good things. Practice yoga, clear your chakras, listen to Deepak Chopra's affirmations on Spotify. They're quite wonderful. Buy some crystals, truly. Drink water, drink gallons of water if you can. It's fine if you're peeing. That's gonna be, useful to release a lot of energy that is inside of you that allows you to be blind in the face of very human things that are taking place.
Thank you for your comments.
Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by Michael Novick, Leah Renee, and Audrey George.
Yes, he's very spiritual, and he's right. I'm a Christian, but we're in a time where the future is uncertain. So when you're afraid of losing power, just like Hitler, you start murdering people that you perceive as the greatest threat. So black people, people like myself that you can't force into the box, and other people still fighting for their right to think for themselves in this effort to depopulate in this mind control, mass manipulative society as we enter this one world government, which is Caesar, in the last days of this age. So he was being very positive. 2 weeks ago, as I had begun to explain, I called the police because the Jewish landlords hire and commission the Mexican mafia, low-level Mexican immigrants to harass and sexually harass and murder and abuse and stalk the black women. Okay, they come in our rooms, they put holes in our clothes, they leave calling cards of urine, feces, semen. There's germ warfare, so this is a part of the extermination, and we're the TI, the targeted individuals. So I called the police because around Halloween, a lot of Hispanic people and other people that worship the devil, they bind animals. In Inglewood, I had to do this called the SPCA. So I called the police because it was off of the jurisdiction of the manager's staff of security. So the police came to my door, and so he's Officer Taris. I filed a complaint. So as soon as he knocked on the door, the dogs start barking, of course. So it made me look, no, I'm not delusional, and I didn't hallucinate. So I said, I think that's ironic. Are they working in tandem again in the harassment, servicing of black women, raping, dismembering, and then they cover it up, calling us 5150 crazy crackhead whores, and in the report there's no human involved. Okay, so then he says, well, I have a power drill. I don't need the power drill. I just want some protection. I have protection from God, to whom we are all going to answer. But again, I just wanted that on the record, Officer Tatis. Again, and for all of you,
thank you for your comments,
we are
ma'am.
not sex goddesses to be serviced, okay, to be used.
Ma'am, we need to move on to the next speaker.
Right, we're
Thank you
not
for your
energy
comments.
battery chargers. I don't participate in Babylonian orgies.
Thank
and
you.
for the black women that do not, again,
Ma'am, can you please see the mic?
Our bodies, we own them, right? So for all the misogynists on the police courts,
Ma'am, thank you.
and
It's-
off.
Your time
We're
is
not
up. Thank
reverting
you.
back to slavery, where single black women are to be serviced by white, black, or Hispanic men, or lesbians.
Michael Novick with White People for Black Lives, and I moderate a Yahoo group called Stop Police Abuse Now. I want to reiterate two things I said earlier. One is that if you're serious about checking on the efficacy of any of the training you're doing, you need to have sting operations that are run by the LAPD on the LAPD so that people are out in the street, that the officers don't know are officers checking on them to see how they react in those situations. Otherwise, the rest of it's nonsense, because they need to have the feeling that anybody they go up to might be somebody that has their career on the line, and if not treating everybody at that level, then they're going to violate any of the policies you create. The other thing I want to ask again and point out is I've raised over and over again, and I've never seen any response. There's tens of thousands of dollars on top of the $1.5 billion budget week after week that you're getting. I want to see somebody in this commission actually tally it up and see how much it is, and maybe redirect that money, if not the actual budget money, to much more needed social needs, feeding the hungry, and finding people jobs and offering intervention into violence that's going on. And then, again, I don't understand why you do this, but after you take public comment at a presentation like that went on for 2 hours, you did not ask a single additional question of any of those people or talk about changes that might be needed, either in the policy, the strategy, the mission of the police, let alone the tactics. So, why people come here, I'm not sure at this point, because you're obviously not responsive to it.
Leah Renee, followed by Audrey George and Ted Hayes.
Hi, Leah Renee. Actually, I feel demeaned that I was interrupted and was not able to give my comment in full regarding item 2A. And the reason why is that your item 2A, I looked it up after we spoke, or you asked me to stop speaking. It says the Board of Police Commissioners directed the Office of Inspector General to prepare an overview of how the investigative practices and training involved during the last. Okay, the thing is that you kept repeating that you didn't have enough money and that the city didn't have enough money. And I came here to show you how public and private actors are corruptly misappropriating public funds that the city needs to pay for the public services, including the items that you talked about today in 2A. It's reasonable that nobody's going to come and work for free. It's reasonable that you cannot train officers if there's not enough money. It is unreasonable if I try to come and file a complaint for illegal activity because it's rampant in Pacific Palisades and in Venice, California, violations of the law. They falsely alter documents. I watched, and I keep coming, and I keep showing up, and I'm 4 years, and I keep paying property taxes, and I'm being denied honest services. So thank you for letting me get part of that out. I got 39 seconds. The whole reason I came here today is to bring your attention that there's a whole fiasco going down. And the last time this happened up the coast, 11 people died. And just down the coast, 1 man died a year ago, 2 years ago. So anyway, I made you a printout. It says it all here. It says the penal code and the violations. So here it is. I'll hand it all to you. If I could get it stamped, that would be really great that I put it in. And would be really, really nice is if we could get help. If there could be somebody we could go to and get help, and we could get a number so we can follow it up. Because it's unreasonable for me to keep coming here and not being able to follow up. Thank you very much.
Audrey George, not present. Ted Hayes.
I really wonder why, if they're only a lousy 2 minutes we have before you, it's important that we be sane, coherent, organized, and speak to the subject. Why not let us simply exhaust our time and leave? But when you do that in public to a hostile public, they believe that's an exhibition of their character, that you don't want us to say anything. You don't want us to talk. So I would suggest, Mr. Johnson, leave the fact that people don't speak on the item in question alone. It doesn't matter. In the presentation, there was a mention of new source of documents. At this particular time, I'd like to know what the source of a photograph in our document on use of force of a black and white police vehicle with 5 bullet holes in the windshield. It appeared on 3 different pages in that document. Where did that occur? What were the circumstances? And why does that picture appear on 5 different pages? Why? You can surmise what it is. The police officer being shot at, 5 bullets come in, they survive. Police officers firing through the windshield, you can't do that. The glass will come back into your eyes. So I am making a formal request right now about the source of that picture. What does it represent? Why is it in the use of force document 3 times? Because there's going to be a new source of documents.
Mr. Hayes, if you'll speak with Commander Melanowski in the back of the room, we'll get your contact information. Be happy to provide you the source of that.
All right, very good. And more importantly, a high school student would have done a much better job of laying out the graphs, the pie charts, and something other than shades of gray. They know red,
Yes,
green,
sir, we've noted your
polka dot,
conversation.
and all that.
We're going to make it better.
There are no.
That high school student will take them.
There are no other public comment cards on item number 4. We're on item number 5, closed session items. We have a card from Michael Novick and Ted Hayes. Mr. Novick's gone. Ted Hayes, please.
No.
I mentioned last week that the Brown Act requires that when you come back from your closed session, each individual commissioner must tell how they voted. All right? So you usually run us out even though you go out. We can't sit in these warm, comfortable chairs. We have to go into the lobby and sit on that cold marble floor until you come back, and then they let us back in. But you're not here during your closed session. Why can't we be here, sitting down, reminiscing about things until you come back? Because you're supposed to do that in public, and we're supposed to hear from each and every one of you how you voted. Read the Brown Act. Some of you are lawyers. They can interpret it for you. And you might even call upon your own lawyer over there. He might be able to help you out for once.
There are no other public comment cards. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 5A1 in accordance with Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 5A1 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. Mr. Vice President, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy and I'm in Little Tokyo, and you're watching Channel 35, Your City, Your Channel.
On this episode of At Your Library, we discover that your Los Angeles Public Library is a center for lifelong learning, from improving your English to hitching a ride on Route 66. Wherever your interests lie, we're there. So stop by and expand your mind at your library.